Chapter 406. Crash. With a crisp sound like glass shattering, the pitch-black space collapsed into countless fragments. Through the gaps of the fragments, the scenery of the Harmony River was revealed. Under the strong impact, the yin and yang treasure chest of the Wuxia siblings was suddenly penetrated. The solid outer wall of the yin and yang treasure chest collided with the non-fei sword defense, but it only persisted for a moment before it collapsed. A golden ball of light penetrated through the chest and then crazily rotated above the Harmony River. At the same time, the two siblings who were lurking on the other side of the river vomited blood, and the immortal heart in their jade mansion shook as if it was about to burst. This yin and yang treasure chest has long been closely linked with their cultivation base, and along with the progress of their cultivation method, the level of their magical treasure would continue to rise. Not long ago, the yin and yang treasure chest had just completed its advancement, and its ability had been greatly evolved, which made it the sharp weapon that the two siblings used to fight against Wang Lu. However, conversely, if one of them suffered, all of them suffered. The treasure chest was not omnipotent. Although it had many magical abilities, it was also divided into its strengths and weaknesses. Among them, head-on collision was precisely its weakness. Although the treasure chest space was solid, it was still relatively speaking. In the face of Wang Lu's unreasonable non-fei sword defense, the yin and yang treasure chest absolutely could not hold on. Before this, they had made a number of contingency plans, all of which were to avoid a head-on collision with Wang Lu. However, they never thought that Wang Lu could actually use this kind of ingenious method to force them to have no other choice. When Wang Lu accelerated infinitely in the void, his speed accumulated to a horrifying level. No matter how the two siblings changed the treasure chest space, it was difficult for them to lock Wang Lu in the center of the space. Finally, Wang Lu seized the opportunity to fiercely hit the outer wall of the treasure chest. Thus, all of their hard work was like running water. It was not that their strength was too weak, nor was it that the yin and yang treasure chest level was not high enough. It was because Wang Lu's unique tactic of counteracting the force of the yin and yang treasure chest made it impossible for them to guard against it. In fact, Wang Lu's infinite acceleration could only be used in the yin and yang treasure chest. Although the space within the treasure chest could change into anything, it was limited by the cultivation of the siblings. It was very different from the real world. The laws in the box had been highly simplified and were far less profound and complex than the real world. Otherwise, Wang Lu would have used it in the opposite direction a long time ago, becoming one with the sword and breaking through the sky if he could just cancel the force in a certain direction. This kind of extremely restrictive tactic was naturally not the result of a flash of inspiration at the last moment. Instead, it was the result of a long period of thought and a sudden burst of energy. Before he was plotted against and put into his treasure chest, Wang Lu had actually deeply recognized the flaws of the non-fei sword. Unless he could be like his master, who could easily expand his non-fei sword defense to hundreds of meters, thousands of meters, or even more, otherwise, once he was confined and restricted, he would not be able to exert his strength and would lose without a fight. In order to solve this predicament, the only way was to borrow strength. However, Wang Lu did not have a mature plan on how to operate it. Previously, Wang Lu only had a hazy idea to offset the force and fall infinitely, but it had not been perfected yet. However, when he was really in a predicament, the flash of thinking fiercely broke out, which allowed him to make the right response in the first place. And this ability was the biggest factor that supported him to be undefeated since his debut. The Wuxia siblings were defeated in a sorry state. The younger brother, Wuxia Wanyun, had a relatively light injury. He pulled his sister's hand and prepared to escape. However, when he turned around, he felt that his sister was stuck in the same place and refused to move. "Sister, what are you doing?" While speaking, Wuxia Wanyun anxiously looked at the spinning ball of light in midair. That was Wang Lu using a special way to counteract the violent momentum of him breaking through the wall of the box. And when his momentum was exhausted and stabilized again, it would be the time for the two of them to face a disaster. Were it not for the sneak attack just now, the two siblings were far from Wang Lu's opponent. Even though they were already considered as elite disciples in Xingjing sect, compared to the lead disciple, there was still a world of difference. There was no chance of winning in a head-on fight. "We can't go," Wuxia Wanyu said in a sinking voice and shook off her brother's hand. "Sister, wake up, don't be blinded by hatred." Wuxia Wanyu softly said, "This has nothing to do with hatred. Senior brother Jianglu left us here, giving us the task to delay Wang Lu for at least an hour. However, we have only delayed him for less than half an hour. This is not good." Wuxia Wanyun anxiously said, "So what? We have tried our best. There's no point in staying here, we will only get ourselves into trouble." Just now when we delayed Wang Lu, most of the troops have already gone down Harmony River. At this time they should have already reached their destination. Wang Lu is not known for his speed, so he can't catch up. Then senior brother Jianglu should have told us that half an hour is enough. Previously when he said 1 hour, there must be a reason. When Wang Yuanyu was defeated, her mind was actually very clear. Not to mention, it's not that there's no way to stop him. Although the strength gap is really big, in fact, we are all peak Shudan stage, so we are still in the same realm. As long as we are willing to pay the price, nothing is absolute. Listening to his sister, how could Wang Yuanyun, as her younger brother, not understand? Suddenly he was aghast. Sister, you don't want to perish together with him, right? It's not perishing together. After all, this is the immortal dreamland, so we have the last insurance. At most, the next few years of cultivation will be a bit bumpy. Well, when I refine the yin and yang treasure chest with you, it's inevitable that I'll be a bit of a burden, I'm sorry. With that, Wang Yuanyu floated up and quietly flew toward the still spinning Wang Lu on Harmony River. This time, the woman didn't have the slightest anger. She was unprecedentedly calm, maintaining the best posture to face this unprecedentedly powerful enemy. This time it had nothing to do with personal grievances, but for senior brother Jianglu, senior sister Qianghua, the entire team, and even Xingjing sect. Wang Yuanyu was not the best cultivator. Her talent and perception were between first-rate and second-rate. If not because she and Wang Yuanyun could hold the yin and yang treasure chest together, she would not even be qualified to be selected into the 36-people team of senior sister Qianghua. However, in the face of the most powerful opponent on the same level as her heart was surprisingly calm. Wang Lu, you're really powerful. Perhaps from now on, even seeing your back is an extravagant hope, but at least at this moment I can definitely stop you so that you have no time to come back to rescue me. At least this time I will definitely win. With a strong determination, Wang Yuanyu began to try to melt her immortal heart and combine it with the magical power in her jade mansion. Of course, she only melted a small part. If she melted more, even if she had an insurance measure, it would still be a dead end. Then she fused the magical power with the essence of her immortal heart and turned it into a viscous net, which then covered Wang Lu's head. Taking advantage of the fact that Wang Lu hasn't completely digested his momentum, she firmly locked him in this place with this limitless sky net that surpassed Shudan's stage. As long as she could delay him for half an hour, her task would be declared a success, and she had the confidence to complete this task. However, when the heavenly net fell, the amazing scene made Wang Yuanyu dumbfounded. The golden ball disappeared. In front of Wang Yuanyu's eyes, that crazily spinning golden ball suddenly disappeared like a phantom. However, the limitless sky net didn't touch anything. It just quietly fell on the surface of the water and spread out. Wang Yuanyu's mind went blank, and her whole body could not stop trembling. Because she had understood everything. Wang Lu had already left. When he broke through the yin and yang treasure chest, he didn't use the spinning to offset the momentum, but instead he directly used this high speed to fly toward the capital city downstream of Harmony River. What was left in the same place was basically an illusion, and he himself had cast a spell of invisibility, which allowed him to leave without anyone noticing. The illusion and invisibility should be completed at the moment when he broke through the treasure chest. Wang Lu's timing was very clever. At that time, when the Wang Yue siblings suffered the backlash from the treasure chest, their primordial spirit was in a trance, so they completely didn't notice Wang Lu's trick. And Wang Lu was indeed worthy to be the lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect. While his swordsmanship was superb, his spell attainment was also quite profound. However, even if she understood all of this, it was already useless. The spell that Wang Yuanyu released with great awareness was basically meaningless. After a long silence, Wang Yuanyu suddenly felt that she was seeing stars, and the whole world began to distort and collapse. She let out a muffled groan, and black blood gushed out from her 7 orifices. She could no longer support her body and fell from the sky. AI really troublesome. At the same time, Wang Lu, who was flying at the highest speed on his flying sword, had long left those 2 small fries behind him. With the IQ of those 2 people, 1 illusion and 1 invisibility was enough to deal with it. The real difficulty was still behind him. Being locked in the treasure chest was a mistake. Although he quickly escaped by relying on a strange fighting method, it still wasted a lot of time. During this period, Xingjing sect team would inevitably seize the opportunity to go down the river. Then, Zhou Mumu and the others would be in big trouble. Everyone was the lead disciple of the 5 uniques, but not everyone was like him, good at fighting against many and having perfect defense. He had the courage to face the whole team of Xingjing sect alone, but other people had no such possibility. Especially senior sister Zhou Mumu, she was actually not good at fighting. Once she was sneak attacked, she didn't have a strong survival ability. Although before she left, he had already reminded her that she shouldn't be too caught off guard, but forget it, it's useless to think too much now. A professional should have a professional mentality. When I arrive at the scene, I'll do my best. Wang Lu frowned and then extracted more magical power from his jade mansion and poured it into the sword of Mount Kuan, making the flying speed faster. Before long, the capital city located downstream of Harmony River finally appeared in his field of vision. Looking from a distance, it was still a peaceful and bustling scene. Wang Lu's worry had not been reduced. The scene before him was not necessarily a good thing. Xingjing sect team must have been here for some time, but the whole city unexpectedly had no response to them. Where should he start next? Just as Wang Lu stopped for a moment and fell into thought, suddenly a loud explosion sounded in the city. In a Ye's residence, a transparent glass wall was broken. Countless pieces of distorted light fragments rustled down, and a red mist diffused out from the hole. Wang Lu's heart trembled. That red mist was clearly a Ye's blood-marked divine spear. Chapter 407. The blood-marked divine spear was a Ye's strongest killing move. Its power was unparalleled. One spear could defeat the golden-clad army of Golden City. Of course, the price was not cheap. Each time it was used, it would consume a blood mark, and the preciousness of the blood mark was needless to say. For a Yi to use the blood-marked divine spear at this time, the situation was obviously very unfavorable. The periphery of the mansion was covered by a spell so that for a long time, the entire city did not respond to all of this. When Wang Lu landed into the mansion from the air, he found that the situation was even worse than expected. A Ye's exquisite small home was only left with broken tiles and debris. The traces of spell wreaking havoc were everywhere in the mansion. More than 10 Xingjing sect cultivators were lying unconscious in the courtyard. There were less than 10 people scattered around, struggling to maintain their standing posture, but they were already an arrow at the end of its flight. There were only a few people who could really maintain their combat power. The entire team was almost paralyzed. However, the situation of the opponents of Xingjing sect was even worse. Zhou Mumu's face was pale as she half knelt on the ground. Her diamond ring was mottled with blood. Although her life was not in danger, she no longer had the power to fight. Zhan Zai transformed into a thunderbolt, but the light was dim. Obviously, he only had the ability to erupt once or twice. In the field, only a Yi was still in his peak state. Holding the blood-marked divine spear, he stood in the center with a murderous aura all over his body. No one dared to approach within a radius of 10 meters around him. However, from the horrible scars on his body, it could be seen that his state would not last long. The blood-marked divine spear could be said to be the deterrent of helplessness. In fact, a Yi simply did not have the power to completely release the blood-marked divine spear. At this time, the blood mark on the spear was indeed only a deterrent. And then there were the two people in the worst condition. Sacred Leaf Shaman was lying in a pool of blood. On her waist there was a ghastly wound that almost cut her in half. Fortunately, Zhan Zai was by her side, trying his best to squeeze out some magical power to stabilize her injury. However, the situation was still not optimistic. The Lord of Grey Mountain was in a desperate situation. The young girl stood in the corner of the courtyard. Behind her was a mountain of building wreckage, and in front of her was the heavy shield. The young girl held the shield in her hand, and her gaze was solemn and serious. However, this posture did not help to improve her situation at all. There were 5 Xingjing sect people gathered around her. Although 3 of them were injured, she was afraid that she could not contend against any one of them. Not to mention one of them had a sturdy build and was dressed in extraordinary clothes. Perhaps he was the leader of this Xingjing sect team. When Wang Lu arrived, he saw such a scene that could be called as the end of the situation. Before he could think of what to say, someone in the field sneered. It was the leader who was as sturdy as a bull. "Wang Lu, you're finally here? Oh, Jianglu?" Upon hearing the voice, Wang Lu recognized his identity. When they first confronted each other in the ancient sword tomb, Power King Jianglu left a deep impression on him. As an inner court disciple of Xingjing sect, he led his team to suppress the whole field. Even the lead disciple of Kunlun sect, Zhou Mumu, was endlessly depressed. Even though there was the factor that Zhou Mumu was not good at fighting, Jianglu's formidable strength was also evident. After a long time, the opponent that was difficult to contend with in a head-on fight seemed to be nothing now. However, Jianglu obviously didn't intend to confront Wang Lu head-on. When Wang Lu appeared, while talking to Wang Lu, he secretly made a gesture to his companion. Kill that young girl Lan at all costs. And Wang Lu also became aware of Jiang Lu's intention at the same time. Although he didn't know why Jiang Lu was so obsessed with a young girl of Grey Mountain who had already lost her master's identity, but since it was supported by the enemy, Wang Lu naturally had to oppose it. Therefore he immediately flew on his flying sword, trying to bypass Xingjing sect people to come to Lan's side. However, how could Jiang Lu let him get what he wanted? His huge body was like a strong barrier, which blocked in front of Wang Lu in advance. Wang Lu's non-Fei sword was good at defense but not good at breaking through. Thus, the trajectory of his flying sword was very little. Wang Lu found that he was intercepted by Jiang Lu and could not change the direction to bypass him. Therefore he immediately launched his non-Fei sword, trying to use the nameless sword to rebound the momentum and collapse Jiang Lu. However, when the sword of Mount Kuan touched Jiang Lu's body, the place where the force came from was empty, which made him extremely uncomfortable. He wanted to move forward, but in front of him, there seemed to be an astonishingly elastic viscous network. And when he wanted to rebound, he found that the resistance had disappeared without a trace. After not seeing each other for a long time, Wang Lu was not the only one who had made progress. That power king Jiang Lu who won with brute force at the beginning had already mastered his power to the finest detail. In his first head-on confrontation with Wang Lu, he actually didn't fall into a disadvantageous position by relying on this power transformation technique. However, it was only for this moment that he didn't fall into a disadvantageous position. Seeing that the simple impact was ineffective, Wang Lu immediately changed his sword momentum. The incomparably firm and fierce non-Fei sword also became soft and ethereal, and the sword momentum was uncertain. And in the face of such an impact, it was impossible for Jiang Lu to win by change. However, to be able to stop him for a moment was enough. Goodbye, lead disciple of Spirit Sword Sect. With a faint smile, Jiang Lu used his thick palm to meet Wang Lu's sword. Wang Lu was startled, thinking, is this guy courting death? It was true that Jiang Lu's physical strength was almost unparalleled among his peers, but in a head-on collision with non-Fei sword, he had no chance of winning. Or did he have the confidence to deal with him before the head-on collision? With a trace of doubt, Wang Lu's sword momentum became firmer. The sword of Mount Kuan stabbed Jiang Lu's palm, and then the two extremely powerful forces violently collided. Then Wang Lu looked at everything that happened in front of him. Jiang Lu's palm collided with the sword of Mount Kuan, and his well-tempered arm, under the absolute crushing force, twisted, broke, and disintegrated. Blood, flesh, bones, all crumbled into powder and then were crushed into even finer pieces that could not be seen with the naked eye. The expression on Jiang Lu's face changed from calm to extremely painful, and then to shock and confusion, as if he couldn't accept the result in front of him. However, with his strength, wasn't this the inevitable result of a head-on collision with non-Fei sword? What did he have to be unconvinced about? What the hell are you guys doing? After a brief confrontation, Jiang Lu roared in pain and staggered back. His entire right arm disappeared without a trace, and even the right side of his chest muscles were completely broken. His injury was extremely heavy. However, he was more concerned about the situation behind him. And behind him, the four Xingjing sect cultivators each took out their magical weapon and poured their strongest magical power into it, going all out to suppress a shield-wielding girl. With their strength, the girl should have died on the spot without the slightest resistance. However, at this time, with the shield in her hand, her posture was as straight as a pine tree, and even her breathing rhythm didn't change. However, the complexion of the four Xingjing sect cultivators turned red, and their breathing stagnated. They even had no time to respond to Jiang Lu's question. Regarding this scene, Wang Lu was also full of curiosity. What are you guys doing? Isn't it obvious? On the other side of the courtyard, Zhou Mumu barely adjusted her breathing and then hoarsely said, as long as you kill Lan, it's tantamount to you being expelled. Wang Lu was startled. What's the reason for this? What does it have to do with me if she dies? As soon as this remark came out, everyone's eyes focused on him. Obviously, Wang Lu had asked an incomparably stupid question. After realizing this, Wang Lu furrowed his brows. Could it be that, as my summoner, once she dies she will implicate me? But I've already lifted the master-follower relationship with her. Tieske, could it be that the master-follower relationship has a deeper connection? Jomumu wryly smiled. Junior brother Wang Lu, this 5-blood spirit crown competition is really too disadvantageous to you. It doesn't give you any time to collect information, so you don't even know this most basic rule. The 5 of us are essentially summoned by this world's 5-blood spirit crown. The master-follower relationship with the summoner is determined by the world's law, not just by relying on the blood marks. Once the master dies as the follower, we will immediately be expelled from this world, and the blood spirit power in our body will also fall into the hands of others. So that's how it is. After listening to this, Wang Lu nodded in understanding and then said, in that case the action of Xingjing sect people is easy to understand. They don't have the confidence to win against me, so they locked their target on Lan. It's just that no one expected that Lan, who was supposed to be the weakest, suddenly became stronger, so that they fell short of success. While speaking, he had already arrived at Lan's side. Unfolding his non-phase sword defense, the 4 Xingjing sect cultivators screamed in unison. Each of them was seriously injured by the backlash of their life source magical weapon. When they fell down, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. As Wang Lu said, the action of Xingjing sect people was almost successful, but they fell short of success. They launched a surprise attack at the best time, which seriously injured Sacred Leaf Shaman and took this opportunity to exhaust Zhan Zai's magical power. Zhou Mumu was an unexpected factor. She shouldn't have come back so soon, which brought great variables to the action. However, Power King Jianglu's response was very timely, besieging Wei to rescue Zhao Zhao, attacking a Yi. Sure enough, because of Shaman's serious injury, a Yi lost his mind and launched an attack with the attitude of mutual destruction. After paying a certain price, Xingjing sect people relied on their powerful burst to almost kill a Yi. In order to save a Yi, Zhou Mumu had no choice but to throw herself in and was seriously injured. In this way the only one left was Lan, who had no influence on the situation. This young master of Grey Mountain was the weakest, which was not news in this world. For the sake of safety, Xingjing sect people left her as the last to be dealt with. Then Wang Lu returned ahead of time, but he was stopped by Jiang Lu for a moment. As long as they took this opportunity to kill Lan, the whole action would be perfect. However, in this last round, Xingjing sect people lost the game. No one thought that the weakest girl could actually contend with the full strength of the 4 Xingjing sect elites. If she had this kind of strength, who would dare to look down on her? You waste, how did you become so strong? The most surprised one was a Yi who had always despised the girl. He propped up his body with his spear and asked with difficulty. The girl said very rationally and boldly, because I'm full. Chapter 408. Food is the god of the people. It was not until this time that Wang Lu deeply understood the true meaning of this ancient saying that had been passed down in the world of mortals. Because I'm full. A simple sentence could make the publicly recognized waste young master of Grey Mountain, in just half a day, be reborn and become a powerhouse that could easily withstand the pressure of 4 elite Xingjing sect cultivators. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, it would be hard for anyone to believe it. However, this incredible scene did indeed happen. At this time, thinking about it, Grey Mountain was able to be comparable to Golden City in the past. Naturally, there was a reason. If this kind of heaven and earth devouring divine ability was displayed to the extreme, its power might be called heaven-defying. At the same time, there was also an explanation as to why Grey Mountain would fall to this point. No matter how rich you are, you can't afford to eat like this. In the past, the most powerful force that was tied with Golden City was, in fact, eaten until it collapsed. Fortunately, after Lan emptied a Ye's warehouse, she was reborn and didn't waste food in vain. Instead, it caused a chain reaction which made the whole scene undergo a huge change. Xingjing sect team fell short of success, and their initiative was completely lost. They didn't even succeed in killing any of the important figures, so they had no choice but to launch the talisman to evacuate, lest everyone fall into the enemy's hands. The price of this emergency evacuation was also quite heavy. In order to avoid the interference of Zhan Zai, Zhou Mumu, and the other 2 lead disciples, the 10 elite disciples of Xingjing sect had to forcibly launch the talisman at the cost of their own lives. Then they were expelled from the immortal dreamland, resulting in a permanent reduction of members. However, the elites of the team were finally saved. The seriously injured Jianglu and several other key disciples were sent away. Otherwise, in this battle alone, Xingjing sect team would have wasted half of their strength. After Xingjing sect team left, the seriously injured people on the field could no longer hold on. One by one, they fell to the ground with a deep sense of dejection on their faces. This battle was really tragic. Xingjing sect team no doubt suffered heavy losses, but the 3-way alliance was also defeated even though they won. 2 lead disciples of the 5 uniques and 3 masters of the 5 spirits were defeated by Xingjing sect team, and from the beginning to the end, Qianghua herself didn't even show up. What if this raid was led by Qianghua? If Qianghua was present, even if Wang Lu was not separated, Could his non-phase sword block Qianghua? Xingjing sect team was really too strong. Previously they had never faced this team head-on, so they didn't accurately estimate the strength of this team. They originally thought that although their comprehensive strength was strong, without the help of Golden City, it would be very difficult for them to confront the two huge organizations, Harmony River and Eternal Tree. However, Xingjing sect team crushed the opponent's plan with a precise surprise attack. Perhaps Xingjing sect team was indeed unable to contend against the two huge forces, but when they were determined to behead the other side, even the three-way alliance could not resist them. In front of the two lead disciples and the three leaders of the five spirits, they crippled their opponents. Such a terrifying strength advantage simply made people unable to see the hope of victory. Thinking of this, even Wang Lu fell into silence, and Lan's sudden outburst seemed to be overshadowed. Only a Yi appeared to be full of energy. Although the king of Harmony River was seriously injured and couldn't even stand up, his monstrous anger still filled the courtyard. It was obvious that he was extremely unwilling to accept the outcome of the battle just now. This group of lowly bastards, the next time I meet them, I'll tear them to pieces. As he spoke, a strong smell of blood filled the air, which showed that Ye's injury was more serious than it looked. Enough, don't talk anymore, just focus on recuperating. Zhou Mumu frowned and interrupted Ye's curse. Usually, once Zhou Mumu opened her mouth, Yi would quickly back down. However, this time, Yi actually turned around and fiercely glared at her with his blood-red eyes. Is now the time to recuperate? Being talked back to by Yi, Zhou Mumu's anger rose. Otherwise, what else can you do? Should he run to Golden City and throw away his life? If you want to die, that's your business, but don't implicate me. I heard that you're also the lead disciple of a big force in the Blood Spirit Temple. Then you should know how humiliating it is to be sneak attacked at home and hurt my wife and child. If I can't wipe out this shame as soon as possible, then I'm a man in vain. As Yi finished his words one word at a time, he actually stood up with the support of his spear and staggered toward the outside of the courtyard. Hey, do you really want to die? I know you like to show off, but no matter how you dress up a corpse, you can't be handsome. No one is going to die. As Yi said that, his pace became more and more stable. With each step, the blood on his body was shaken off a bit, and his broken leather armor and coat were also slowly repaired by his magical power. When he reached the door, they were already as good as new. Of course, people with discerning eyes could see that this was just pretending to be relaxed. His internal injury was heavy, so how could it be so easy to recover? Even if he was the master of water spirit, his resilience could not be so strong. However, Yi finally walked out of the courtyard in a perfect posture. At this time, many people in the city had heard the news, but they all gathered outside the courtyard and no one dared to come in. Seeing Yi going out, people crowded around him, talking all at once to inquire about what happened. Most of them had yet to realize that a fierce battle had taken place in the courtyard. Their king had almost lost his life, and once Yi died under the background of the five spirits' power struggle, it would be difficult for all the people of Harmony River to escape. However, at this time, they were just curious about why there was such a loud noise coming from Ye's house and why there was a blood mist spreading. When Yi came out of the door, he put on a bright smile. Haha, don't worry, it's nothing. I'm teaching a lesson to my disobedient blood spirit, ha. As soon as Yi said this, it immediately caused a roar of laughter. Because Yi had never put on airs, the people of Harmony River boldly teased, "Did you get taught a lesson by your disobedient blood spirit again?" Yi snorted. What a joke. How could she teach me a lesson? This kind of argument, which obviously lacked evidence and momentum, immediately attracted a burst of boos. Of course, most of the boos were jokes. The people loved and respected this king who did not put on airs, and they also trusted his strength. His weakness in front of followers did not harm his reputation. After Yi and the onlookers laughed and joked around for a while, the crowd gradually dispersed. No one wanted to take up too much of Ye's time. Everyone knew that during the five blood spirits crown struggle, he was far from being as leisurely as he appeared. However, there were still a few people who stayed in place. Seeing them, Ye's expression also sank. Yi pointed out two people from the crowd. You two each share half of the burden for me. The two people looked like ordinary people that could be seen everywhere in the three cities of Harmony River. Their stature, appearance, and even temperament were ordinary. At this time, being pointed out by Yi, they both raised their heads, but their eyes revealed a brilliance that did not belong to mortals. Yes. The two people nodded in surprise and each stretched out a hand to Yi. While holding the hands of the two people, Yi sighed. I never thought that one day I still have to rely on your strength. This is not handsome at all. The two of them smiled and said, "If we can't do anything for our king for the rest of our lives, it will be our shame. So, just treat it as a way for us to be handsome for once. Please use this power to your heart's content." As soon as their voice fell, two groups of black and red spheres gushed out from Aye's chest and flowed into the two people's bodies through his arms. The next moment, the two people uttered a muffled groan, black blood gushed out from their 7 apertures, and then they slumped down. However, Aye glowed with an astonishing momentum, without the slightest trace of injury. This move startled everyone present. Obviously, Aye had exchanged vitality with those two people, transferring his own injuries to other people, allowing himself to recover from his weakened state after the battle to become full of vigor and vitality. It was just that this kind of divine skill was unheard of before. Even Zhou, the spirit of water, had never heard of it. To be able to become an overlord in this world, no one was a simple character. Lan had the Futi divine skill, Aye had the great blood transfusion method, and as for Shaman, perhaps she also had an unknown divine skill. It was just that, in a short period of time, there was no way to see it. After transferring his injury, Aye looked back at the courtyard that had been reduced to ruins and his still unconscious wife. With a complicated look in his eyes, he shook his head, picked up his spear and was about to leave. Zhou looked back at Wang Lu, but found that Wang Lu had no intention to stop him. She was annoyed, but she also realized that although they were temporarily cooperating, they were still in a competitive relationship. Some things couldn't be counted on others. However, she also knew that it was impossible for her to stop Aye's revenge, so she had to earnestly exhort, "Remember, don't try to be brave, your life does not belong to you alone." "Rest assured, I never try to be brave." Aye smiled. Because people who try to be brave are not handsome at all. Aye did not lie. He indeed did not try to be brave alone to throw away his life. In the next half a month, alone, he repeatedly went deep into the territory of Golden City. With the spear in his hand, he killed 15 celestial generals and hundreds of celestial soldiers, and drove 3 Xingjing sect cultivators out of the immortal dreamland. During this period it was completely a sneak attack. In each action he quietly lurked in the dark, waiting for the enemy to completely relax their guard. Then his deadly spear would pierce the enemy's vital point, and after that he would immediately escape. He never provoked an enemy that was too powerful. Each action was very cautious. Before he made his move, he would repeatedly confirm his retreat route. Like a skilled and ruthless hunter, he completed the hunt again and again. The spear, this kind of tool, first appeared to hunt wild animals, and the king of Harmony River, who used the spear as his weapon, was essentially an excellent hunter. It was just that, according to his temperament, he disdained to use his hunting skills to slaughter the weak. He preferred to have a one-on-one duel with a powerful local leader. However, the surprise attack of Xingjing sect team made him abandon his hobby and incarnate into a hunter in the dark, setting off a terrifying wave again and again in the territory of Golden City. From the results of the battle, Aye's revenge was quite successful. In addition to weakening Golden City and Xingjing sect team, his many successful assassinations further enlarged the gap between the two, so that Xingjing sect team had no time to carry out any action against Harmony River and Eternal Tree. However, from another point of view, when Aye went out to fight, there were signs of instability in his backyard. Chapter 409. After the surprise attack by Xingjing sect team, Sacred Leaf Shaman returned to her residence in Eternal Tree at the suggestion of her follower. Seriously injured, she needed a lot of wood element spiritual energy to recover. At the same time, the surprise attack in the center of Harmony River's capital city made it difficult for people to have confidence in the defense of Harmony River. The capital city of Harmony River was no doubt prosperous, but the open structure of the 3 cities as well as Aye's complete lack of awareness as a king, made his capital city appear to be riddled with holes in the war era, allowing people to infiltrate. Perhaps Shaman herself had no opinion on this, but after careful analysis, Zhan Zai felt that this place was not safe at all. Wang Lu's original idea of going to the upper reaches of Harmony River alone to intercept them was correct. Unfortunately, Wang Yue's siblings used their treasure chest to isolate him and thus failed to stop Xingjing sect team. However, the key point was that Wang Lu only walked along the river, but he already saw the offensive and defensive points of Harmony River. Aye had been a king for so many years, why couldn't he think of setting up checkpoints in the key areas? Allying with such a person really made people a bit more careful. Therefore, under the strong request of Zhan Zai, Shaman had to leave Harmony River and return to her hometown. Eternal Tree was a towering tree. Before actually visiting it, it was hard for people to imagine that it would be so huge. This giant tree was located at the end of the lower reaches of Harmony River. Its trunk spanned across both sides of the river. It was taller and more majestic than any mountain in this world. Its canopy was completely hidden above the clouds, blotting out the sky and the sun. It was said that half of the light in this world came from the fluorescent insects that lived in the canopy. When the time came, the fluorescent insects flew out of their habitat, and it would be daytime under Eternal Tree. In the resting room of the fluorescent insects, it would be night. Legend has it that Eternal Tree supported the sky and the earth in this world. If Eternal Tree collapsed, the whole world would be destroyed. However, no matter how powerful a creature was, it was impossible to destroy this tree. Therefore, it was named Eternal Tree. In this sacred and eternal tree lived hundreds of millions of creatures. These creatures built their own cities in the tree. In the most central place was the residence of Sacred Leaf. It was the place where she meditated and dealt with various affairs. However, when the current Sacred Leaf married the king of Harmony River, she spent most of her time in Harmony River and rarely lived in Eternal Tree. When Shaman returned to the Eternal Tree under the protection of Zhan Zai, her restless mood suddenly calmed down. Shaman thought that she had been accustomed to the dense water vapor above Harmony River for many years, but in the end, this place surrounded by green leaves was more suitable for her. In the following days, while a Yi repeatedly went in and out of Golden City, Shaman concentrated on recuperating. In the surprise attack of Shengjing sect team, the pressure on Shaman and her follower was actually the greatest. Because Shaman not only had to take care of herself and a Yi, she also had to take care of the two children who had no fighting power at all. Her power was divided into 4 parts, and Shengjing sect suddenly concentrated fire on her. If not for Zhan Zai's timely response, Shaman would have died on the spot. Speaking of which, this is all thanks to you. On the sickbed, Shaman's face already had some color, but compared with her original dignified and elegant posture, she still looked haggard. The woman quietly breathed the quiet air of the Eternal Tree and adjusted her body little by little. Zhan Zai accompanied her quietly by her bedside. He was reading a book woven from leaves with great interest. Hearing Shaman mention him, Zhan Zai said without raising his head, "You and I suffer together. If you die, I will immediately be expelled. On the contrary, even if I am expelled, if you can persist until the end and get the 5 blood spirit crown, I can still share the benefits. Therefore, based on this simple logic, it is natural for me to help you." Shaman tilted her head and swept Zhan Zai with her watery eyes. "You're really a strange person. Given the average IQ and level of academic civilization on your side, I can understand your evaluation of me." Zhan Zai casually replied and continued to turn the pages of the book in his hand. It was just that, while reading, he couldn't help but sneer at the corner of his mouth. Shaman curiously asked, "Is there any problem? Why don't you ask me the other way around? What's the problem?" Zhan Zai said, closed the book and then asked, "Do you usually cultivate these spells?" Shaman said, "This is the inheritance of Eternal Tree. Enough. No wonder Eternal Tree has such a favorable location, yet it can't be ranked in the top 3 in this world." Zhan Zai unceremoniously commented, "A messy spell system, an inheritance that doesn't seek to advance, it's really a reckless waste of natural resources. I saw that your attainment in spells was good and thought that you should have a good inheritance and growth potential. But looking at you, if you want to get the 5 blood spirit crown, it's simply a joke." Shaman froze for a moment and then said with a magnanimous smile, "Originally, I didn't," Zhan Zai said, "originally, I didn't expect to take the crown alone. Wake up, I don't know how optimistic you are about the king of Harmony River, but he can't persist until the end." Shaman said, "You don't know him," Zhan Zai coldly said, "You don't know Wang Lu either. You don't know who we will face in the end." "Wang Lu? That earth spirit? He is indeed powerful, but you don't know how powerful he really is." Zhan Zai said, "Our biggest enemy is Golden City, but our last enemy must be Wang Lu, the winner of the 5 blood spirit crown. Therefore, sooner or later we have to face him. If we want to win, we must not relax our vigilance against him. And a Yi will never raise his vigilance against him." Thinking of a Ye's temper, Shaman could only helplessly smile. A Yi can't be counted on, and Zhou Mumu also can't be counted on. Therefore, in the end, targeting Wang Lu is your task. Unfortunately, now it seems that you might as well just directly surrender. Zhan Zai indignantly said this, but then he immediately changed his words. "No, we can't just give up like this. How about this, when you recuperate, I will reorganize the spell system for you. If you reconstruct the spell system according to my method, perhaps you can still be saved." That's settled." Upon hearing this, Shaman was dumbfounded. She had summoned this wood element blood spirit for some time, but she didn't know that he was actually such an arrogant and even lawless person. However, when she thought of these past few days when she was seriously injured, his meticulous care, and especially that day when she was attacked by Shengjing sect people, Zhanzai risked his life to rescue her. Shaman couldn't get angry. Therefore, she had to tactfully say, "I respect your strength and insight as a blood spirit. It's just that, the inheritance of eternal tree for thousands of years has its own profound mystery." Zhanzai sneered. You want to say that my strength is not necessarily better than yours, so what qualification do I have to look down on your inheritance? That's what I thought at first, but I've been reading your legacy manuals these past few days, and I've finally confirmed one thing. Your legacy system is complete bullshit. Who knows how lucky you are to have your current level of cultivation. Of course, even if I say it, you won't believe it. Therefore, I will demonstrate it to you so that you will be convinced. With that, he stood up, and a green light bloomed in the palm of his right hand. A crystal clear seed condensed and formed in the void. A moment later, the outer shell burst open, and a young sapling drilled out and quickly grew to the height of a person. Zhanzai bent down and threw the sapling in his hand down. The roots and branches of the sapling contracted and bent, and then unexpectedly turned into human limbs. Several roots intertwined together and became a pair of powerful legs to support it. This is, Shaman's eyes widened in disbelief. She subconsciously wanted to stand up from the sickbed, but the injury in her body stopped her, causing her to groan in pain and lie back down. Zhanzai lightly said, "This is the guardian tree spirit of your eternal tree that has been passed down for thousands of years. How about it? It can freely use the essence of eternal tree to shape life. According to the ancient records, I now have the rank of Golden Leaf, only one step away from Sacred Leaf. Then, Lord Sacred Leaf, tell me, even if you are in good condition, can you do the same thing as me?" Shaman's face was heavy and she was speechless. Guardian Tree Spirit was not a difficult spell, but even if she was a Sacred Leaf, she could not do it as easily as Zhanzai. And the real problem was, Zhanzai did not get the inheritance of Eternal Tree. Although he was a wood element blood spirit, his cultivation method was heterogeneous, which had nothing to do with Eternal Tree. How could he use the essence of Eternal Tree to shape life? This completely deviated from the basic principle of Eternal Tree. I have the 10,000 methods comprehension. Unless the aptitude requirement is very strict, there is no spell in the world that I can't learn and use. It's funny that this magical ability has never worked on the cultivation method that I really care about, such as Wang Lu's non-phase method, Zhu Shiyao's stellar sword. However, your Eternal Tree's 10,000 years of inheritance seems to be just SOSO. Shaman was still dumbfounded. Her heart was so shaken that she didn't know what to say. Zhanzai smiled. However, compared to you, I just have a better master, which is nothing to be proud of. Moreover, from another point of view, to be able to cultivate to your current level with such a rough inheritance, your aptitude is indeed commendable. With that, Zhanzai's face turned serious. So, I hope you can seriously follow my footsteps. We don't have much time, so we should improve a little bit. Shaman was silent for a long time. Finally, she bit her lip and nodded. Eternal Tree, outside the residence of Sacred Leaf, a cheerful voice suddenly broke the silence. Haha, Senior Brother Zai, I'm here to play with you again. Wait a minute. Unfortunately, the person who came kicked the door open and then stood dumbfounded in front of the door. Inside the room, Lord Sacred Leaf and her follower were sitting on the sickbed. The two held each other's hands, their faces were flushed and their bodies were covered with fine sweat, and then they were naked. Seeing this spectacle, Wang Lu froze for a moment at the door. Then, under the shocked eyes of the master and follower, he quietly closed the door and turned away. Wait, don't go. Shaman's panicked voice came from behind him. Don't go? Stay and have fun together? Wang Lu sneered. I'm not going to lie to you. Chapter 410. In short, it's not what you think. After stopping Wang Lu with a powerful means and coaxing him back to Sacred Leaf residence, Zhanzai pondered for a long time and then opened his mouth to say something. Wang Lu, who was invited back to his residence by Zhanzai's thunder body combination, listened to his words, pondered for a long time and then frowned. It's not what I think? Sacred Leaf Shaman, who had already changed her clothes, still had a blush on her face. With some difficulty, she softly said, I know that scene just now is very easy to misunderstand, but it's really not what you think. Wang Lu looked at Shaman with some surprise. Even you say that? With that, Wang Lu fell into contemplation and then softly said, I thought that you two were comparing notes with each other in order to speed up your healing, or maybe Senior Brother Zai was helping you sort out your cultivation method. But since you said that it's not what I think, it seems that a Yes Green Hat King can't run away. Wait a minute. Zhan Zai was stunned. You actually thought that we were comparing notes in order to speed up our healing? Wang Lu sighed. Sure enough, it's too deviating from common sense, isn't it? No, I just think that, with your character, it's the biggest abnormality for you to actually say such a normal and reasonable conjecture. Zhan Zai was filled with emotion. According to the analysis of the sect, your first reaction should be that the two of us are engaging in illicit affairs. Speaking of illicit affairs, Zhan Zai was a bit embarrassed. Shaman also blushed and turned her head away. Although the scene just now was indeed not her doing anything unkind to her husband, it was indeed too embarrassing. Wang Lu said, if it were any other man I would certainly think so. The problem is that the male cultivators of 10,000 Arts sect have always been destined to be alone for life, storing their yuanyang until death. Therefore, as the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, of course, you can't do that kind of thing. You don't even need to guess. Zhan Zai's expression was complicated. Hearing you say that, I'm really not happy at all. Wang Lu said, not happy? Then let me rephrase it. Congratulations on successfully obtaining a brand new life experience with a beautiful young woman. I will help you cover up a yi. By the way, I also have a variety of secret medicines that Master left for me. Do you need some to liven things up? Forget it. I'm destined to be alone for the rest of my life. In short, why have you come to me this time? After reluctantly resolving the misunderstanding, Zhan Zai had to ask Wang Lu about his intentions. Although everything was just a misunderstanding, if he was really here to play, then don't blame me for falling out with him. Well, if you want to talk business. The main thing is to tell you two injured people to be careful. Xingjing sect team may make a comeback. Zhan Zai's expression immediately turned serious. Xingjing sect people? What happened? To put it simply, the situation forced them to take action to prove their worth, said Wang Lu. Previously, their team raid was not inspired by Golden City. It was completely their own initiative, and this was very sensitive when the relationship between the two sides was in a stalemate. Because Golden City has its own strategic layout, they don't want anyone to complicate the issue. If Xingjing sect team had a brilliant result and successfully killed one or two of the 5 spirit masters, then they could return triumphantly with this achievement. At that time, even the master of Golden City would have nothing to say. Unfortunately, their result was not ideal. After paying a painful price, they couldn't bring any substantial results. Instead, they caused trouble for Golden City. Zhan Zai frowned. His analysis of the situation was somewhat slow, but Shaman has already understood all of this. Although a Yi and I have been seriously injured, Golden City is in an all-out war with Flaming Valley, so they can't spare more strength to expand the results. Therefore, seriously injuring us is meaningless to Golden City. On the contrary, a Ye's retaliation actually caused them to suffer a real loss. Wang Lu said, therefore the master of Golden City is very angry at Xingjing sect team for acting on their own initiative, and if Xingjing sect team wants to save the situation, they must prove their own value. Now they either accept the request of Golden City to enter the battlefield of Flaming Valley and fight head-on with that group of barbarians. Or they want to kill a Yi or they want to target you. And among the three, to fight head-on with Flaming Valley is to bring about their own destruction. A Yi is elusive, so unless Qianghua personally comes forward, it's very difficult to catch him. Only you two, who can peacefully recuperate in the Eternal Tree, are the best targets. Shaman said, Eternal Tree is protected by the previous sacred leaves, so it's not as open as Harmony River, so there's no need to worry about our safety. Very well, as long as you don't worry. Wang Lu indifferently shrugged. Then I'll go, you guys continue. With that, Wang Lu flew away on his flying sword, leaving behind the master and follower of Sacred Leaf who were still somewhat at a loss. Just to remind us he deliberately came here? Zhan Zai said, according to the data, Wang Lu has always done things unexpectedly, and it's difficult to use common sense to measure him. However, the data also shows that although his behavior is unpredictable, he rarely does useless things. This time he came here. Speaking to this, Zhan Zai's face suddenly turned black because he thought, could it be that Wang Lu predicted that in the process of him and Shaman rebuilding their foundation, there would be an awkward situation, so he deliberately came here to collect evidence. In the final analysis, in the 5 spirits power struggle, there was only one winner. Now that Golden City has gradually fallen into a quagmire and has shown signs of decline, the other several parties of the alliance would naturally inevitably shift their energy away from Golden City. Including himself, wasn't the reason why he was willing to spend time to train shaman in order to contend against Wang Lu? If at this time Wang Lu told this news to a Yi, then the consequences would be hard to predict. At least in the handbook compiled by the sect elders, there was no record of how to deal with it. While he was thinking, suddenly shaman behind him exclaimed, "My God! What's wrong?" "Just now, when Wang Lu walked all the way to my door, I didn't hear any report. I originally thought that because he was holding the token no one stopped him, but just now," shaman said, and then felt that her throat was somewhat dry. "Just now, when he left, I suddenly received an alarm from the Nightingale Sentinel, saying that someone without the token left the Eternal Tree and asked me how to deal with it." Zhan Zai gawked for a moment and then said in surprise, "You mean just now he didn't hold the token but sneaked all the way here?" "Indeed." Shaman sank her voice and said, "It's really an impressive lesson." While speaking, her face became more and more gloomy, because the Eternal Tree, which she thought was impregnable, had been proven to be full of flaws. If Xingjing sect people came back, she would not be safe at all. Zhan Zai's face was also very unsightly. Wang Lu's defensive ability was amazing, which was already a well-known fact. At present, among the cultivators of the same generation, except for Qianghua and a few others, no one had the confidence to break his sword defense. Even his thunder body was not enough. However, he had never heard that he had any specialty in other spells. He was just an ordinary inner court disciple, which was not outstanding at all. And now, it seemed that he had amazing attainments in stealth and concealment. Moreover, this was not the crux of the problem. What was the use of Wang Lu, a cultivator who was good at defense, to learn stealth and concealment? It was completely incompatible. Therefore, from a rational point of view, it could only be explained that the overall level of Wang Lu's spell attainment was far above the assessment. Damn it, just how strong is that guy going to become? And if she wanted to fight against the increasingly stronger Wang Lu, relying on herself alone was probably not enough. And in this world, the one who could help her. Zhan Zai turned to shaman. His blazing eyes made the woman tremble. "Next, there's nothing to do here, it's time to leave." After leaving the Eternal Tree, Wang Lu greeted Lan, who had been waiting for a long time, and the two walked side by side. Lan somewhat strangely looked at Wang Lu. The boiling lava that could melt everything was like warm water to him, soaking in it as if it was malt syrup. I don't know how long Golden City has been the overlord of this world, so long that everyone is accustomed to it. Without thinking, they think that they are invincible. No one dares to challenge their throne. They even sneer at other challengers. However, they don't know that things change and nothing is eternal. As he spoke, the burly man propped himself up with his hands and stood up in the lava, revealing his bare skin that was as red as flames. Lava flowed down his chest, further accentuating his sturdy and indestructible figure. Let the people of this world see the real power of Flaming Valley. My follower, you will be the commander-in-chief of the decisive battle army. All of my warriors will be under your command. Don't let me down. Yes. Next to the lava pool, a teenager with short black hair responded with a serious look and a straight posture. On his left cheek, there was a cross scar, which added a bit of vicissitudes to his still immature face. And that pair of eyes that only a warrior could have flashed with a palpitating light. Chapter 411. This is the battlefield between Golden City and Flaming Valley? It's really tragic. Several days later, Wang Lu and his follower left the Eternal Tree and went all the way north to the front line of the war between Golden City and Flaming Valley. As far as the eye could see, the land was scorched and the people were plunged into misery and suffering. Of course, this was not unusual. In this tragic battle between the first and second place, how could it be peaceful? The baptism of blood and fire was the only way. It's just that, if I didn't see it with my own eyes, this scene is really unexpected. Looking at the tens of thousands of rotting corpses on the cracked ground, Wang Lu's eyes were solemn, and then became more and more cold. I originally thought that Golden City and Flaming Valley were evenly matched, and Golden City might be a bit stronger. However, according to the situation of the battlefield, out of 10 corpses, 9 of them are actually from Golden City. Are the soldiers of Flaming Valley actually this elite? As Wang Lu walked on the lifeless battlefield, his eyes constantly swept across the corpses around him, and then he deduced the details of the war from the traces left on the battlefield. He was not a warrior skilled in battle. After cultivating for so many years, although he had experienced many big and small wars, he never really became a warrior. Therefore, deducing the course of the war from the traces left on the battlefield was actually not easy. However, with his powerful computing ability, he always pieced together the truth of the war from the countless fragments. It seems like everyone underestimated the power of Flaming Valley. 60 to 70% of Golden City's strength? With such elite troops, even if Golden City went all out, I'm afraid it would be difficult to say that they would win. 60 to 70%? How could they have the nerve to say that? As he sneered, Wang Lu stood next to a pile of corpses. It was a tall and sturdy barbarian warrior, surrounded by dozens of gold-clad celestial soldiers' corpses. The barbarian warrior had countless scars all over his body, and eventually died of exhaustion. However, the celestial soldiers around him, without exception, were all cut into two. Then, the weapon used by the barbarians was just a sharpened stone axe. In terms of wealth, Golden City is the first in this world, followed by Harmony River and Eternal Tree. Even the withered and decaying Grey Mountain can be ranked fourth. There are only stones in Flaming Valley. Besides the stubborn stones, there are only melted and burning stones. The barbarians lived in the mountains, and even having a full meal was an extravagant hope. Therefore, civilization had always been an unfamiliar concept to Flaming Valley. When the people of Golden City were living a life of luxury, the barbarians of Flaming Valley were always struggling for survival. Such harsh conditions created their unparalleled bravery, but it also made them only valiant. Tens of thousands of elite troops of the barbarian race, each one of them is brave but not astute. They have been repeatedly tricked by other people and have lost miserably. Wang Lu sighed softly as he walked. Lan walked behind Wang Lu and said, "Grey Mountain fought with Flaming Valley 1,000 years ago. If it weren't for our ancestors being familiar with the art of war, I'm afraid there would only be 4 forces left in this world. But after so many years, the people of Flaming Valley are still bold but not astute. It's not that they are born stupid and don't understand the importance of wisdom. It was a unique environment that created a unique civilization. For the barbarians of the Flaming Valley, nothing was more important than martial bravery. In such an environment, it was simply impossible to produce a wise and resourceful person. But now the situation is different." While speaking, Wang Lu had arrived at a high ground on the battlefield. Overlooking the scenery below, Wang Lu saw more things. In this battlefield, Flaming Valley only dispatched the lowest-ranked slave soldiers to utterly defeat the gold-clad army of Golden City. In Flaming Valley, a warrior who could fight against 10 on the battlefield was not even a qualified warrior. Only those who were exceptionally large and could fight against 10 were the real barbarians of Flaming Valley. In the past, the barbarians who only knew how to roar and charge head-on were cleverly divided into many groups. They appeared at different positions at different times. Perhaps with their intellect, they would not be able to understand the profoundness of timing and positioning. But under the control of a brilliant hand, these unique timing and positioning allowed the barbarian warriors to display an unprecedented combat strength. Although he was not good at military fighting, Wang Lu could still see the brilliance of this. Right now, Flaming Valley has obtained the key to leap forward. Lan surprisingly keenly replied, "Fire Spirit? To be precise, in 9 regions. No, in the Blood Spirit Temple, the person who is best at military fighting, the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect." Wang Lu muttered and then raised his head. "What's his name again? Xiang Liang?" "Yes, Xiang Liang. Speaking of which, it's really an oversight. I've thought about everything, but I've neglected to calculate how far Flaming Valley could evolve with the help of a general who can fight against 10,000 enemies. Compared to this, Eternal Tree, Harmony River, and even Grey Mountain are not worth mentioning. However, senior brother Xiang Liang, going too far is as bad as not going far enough. How much confidence do you actually have that you dare to challenge Xingjing Sect team alone? Now that you're advancing triumphantly and your momentum is like a rainbow, aren't you afraid that you'll force Qianghua out of the mountain?" On the frontline battlefield, in a land of disorderly rocks, cold wind whistled, blowing away the warmth from Flaming Valley and disrupted the usual law of heaven and earth. In this rocky mountain, the law was distorted, common sense was overturned, and it was difficult for ordinary creatures to survive. It was a daunting land of danger and death. Even the barbarian warriors of Flaming Valley were unwilling to approach it. However, it was also the geographical junction of the war between Flaming Valley and Golden City, a place where the military would have to contend for. In the struggle between the two, there were more than 100 battles. Those who could contend have already fought, and those who could fight have already fought. Golden City had been continuously defeated and had already shown a declining trend. However, if Flaming Valley wanted to completely establish their advantage and truly drag down the throne of the 10,000 years old hegemon, they still needed a crucial war. This disorderly land was the battlefield chosen by Flaming Valley. And on the battlefield, a legion of Flaming Valley was advancing. In the middle of the army, Dozens of barbarian giants with red, thorny skin and rock-like muscles surrounded a general who was riding a magma beast. That general was undoubtedly the supreme leader of the legion. It was just that, compared to those tall and sturdy warriors, he looked unprepossessing. His stature was thin, his limbs were slender, and he was wrapped in a reddish-brown animal skin that symbolized the position of General of Flaming Valley. However, that animal skin was sewn for the barbarians of Flaming Valley, so it did not fit his body. At the same time, in contrast to the tall barbarian guards around him, the general looked even more thin and small. However, although his stature was thin and small, he had an inviolable, awe-inspiring bearing. When the legion arrived at a place, the general suddenly straightened up on the back of the strange beast, looked around, and then made a decision. Vanguard Army, stop. After resting and reorganizing, you will guard this place. Left Army, advance along the mountain road. Without the order, don't stop. Right Army, follow me along the mountain road on the right side. Wait for my order at any time. The faint sound of a command was instantly transmitted into the ears of every soldier. During the march, the warriors who were still whispering to each other suddenly stopped talking. However, after hearing the order, many of them revealed a puzzled look. Are we going to divide the army into three? So troublesome, dividing the army again. Since this fire spirit became the general, he always divides the army again and again. Obviously he can kill his way through in one breath, but he always makes it so troublesome. Yeah, why divide it into Vanguard Army and Left Army? How do I know which army I belong to? I heard that Golden City is full of incompetent people who are greedy for pleasure. To fight with them, we just need to kill our way through in one go. This division of army and design, doesn't that mean that we, Flaming Valley, are afraid of them? Humph, look at this thin and powerless fire spirit. How could he be the commander-in-chief of the army? This barbarian legion was the elite soldiers personally selected by the king of Flaming Valley. They were the youngest and most powerful warriors in Flaming Valley. However, these young warriors have not fought under the fire spirit, so they refused to be disciplined. Their discussion was quite loud, completely disregarding the fact that the commander was right next to them. When the fire spirit general who issued the order heard this, he could not help but frown. This was too troublesome? It was just dividing these thousands of elite soldiers into three. Was there a simpler military strategy than this in the world? These soldiers of Flaming Valley were only valiant, but they were only elite soldiers, not qualified soldiers at all. He was full of military strategy, but he could not even display 1/10 of it. If it was a real well-tempered elite soldier, he would directly command each soldier. Even if there were thousands of soldiers, they could still be orderly and not in the slightest disorder. As long as the soldiers could follow the command, they would display incredible combat power. In Royal Soldier Sect, many people like to use chess as a metaphor. The commander-in-chief of the battlefield was like a chess player, and the soldiers were the chess pieces. Ordinary chess players would be flustered if they had more than dozens of chess pieces in their hands. Therefore, if they wanted to command tens of thousands of troops, they needed layers of officers to command the soldiers. And the more brilliant the commander, the more chess pieces he could control, the more detailed his command would be, and the more he could operate on the subtleties of the battlefield. And this kind of skill was called micromanipulation in Royal Soldier Sect. And as the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, he had an unparalleled micromanipulation skill among his peers. But now, even dividing the soldiers into three seemed to be impossible. He had amazing skills, but he could not display them. Xiang Liang was not annoyed. He looked at the group of provocative barbarian soldiers and lightly said, "Before leaving, His Majesty has authorized me to be the supreme commander. Military orders are like mountains, they cannot be violated." A barbarian soldier took the lead to stand out and pointed the huge stone axe in his hand at Xiang Liang. "I heard that His Majesty was deceived by a sinister villain like you, so he appointed you as the commander-in-chief. We, the heroes of Flaming Valley, have always fought in an upright manner. Sinister and cunning tricks, we disdain it." Upon hearing this, Xiang Liang was stunned. He had been commanding the army in Flaming Valley for some time, but this was the first time he heard such an overbearing rebellion. Then, what was even more inconceivable was that he actually saw the agreement in the eyes of the soldiers. Perhaps for those who were proficient in politics, they could think of a lot of things through this scene, but at this time, Xiang Liang only remembered the teachings of his master when he was cultivating in Royal Soldier Sect. A person who only knows how to arrange the troops is not qualified to be a commander-in-chief. A real first-class general must make the officers and men under him sincerely convinced, as if they were his own arm. In contrast to his master's teachings, it was clear that this army was not sincerely convinced, as if they were his own arm. Xiang Liang didn't care why they dared to rebel, nor did he care why the king of Flaming Valley handed over such an army to him. He was the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, so there was only one thing he had to do. In that case, Xiang Liang thought for a moment, then raised his right hand high. A halo spread out from his fingertips and swept across the army. A moment later, the light dissipated, and the original noise in the army was completely extinguished. All the barbarian soldiers stood quietly in the same place. Their eyes, which were blazing and jumping, became indifferent and dull. Very good. Xiang Liang looked with satisfaction at the army that no longer had any objections, and casually dispersed the thousands of souls that he had just gathered. Chapter 4:12. Just by raising his hand, he was able to destroy the souls of thousands of fierce warriors. This was no ordinary means. Even if it was the cultivator who was the best at manipulating the soul, before reaching the Yuaning stage without truly experiencing the mystery of the soul, it would be difficult for them to have such attainments. Not to mention that Xiang Liang destroyed the souls of the barbarians of Flaming Valley, whose primordial spirit and body were closely connected. Even the cultivator who was the best at capturing souls would find it difficult to pull their souls out of their bodies. Xiang Liang could do it. He raised his right hand high, and a halo of light tamed the unruly barbarian warriors. Although the price was that they permanently lost part of their 3 souls and 7 spirits, on the other hand, these unruly warriors would henceforth become the most loyal soldiers. Or rather, the purest humanoid puppet. Provoking the cultivator of Royal Soldier Sect, who was the commander-in-chief, was one of the stupidest acts in the world. As the commander-in-chief, the cultivator of Royal Soldier Sect could suppress his subordinates with incredible means. Seizing the soul and destroying the body could be described as a life-and-death power. Although for many people the difference between the commander-in-chief and his subordinates was only in the title. The reason why the superior was superior lay in power and the subtle relationship between people, not in the substantial power gap. However, Royal Soldier Sect could use this illusory title to form a substantial power and make a substantial suppression. The king of Flaming Valley handed over the military command of Flaming Valley to Xiang Liang, and from that moment on, Xiang Liang had the power to kill the barbarian warriors of Flaming Valley. If the title was not legitimate, it would not be justified, but if it was legitimate, it would be omnipotent. This was the ability of the commander-in-chief of Royal Soldier Sect. Was it inconceivable? It was indeed inconceivable, but just as it was difficult for the mortals to understand how the cultivators could fly on flying swords, it was difficult for the cultivators to understand the commander-in-chief ability of Royal Soldier Sect because of the difference in the stage. The military research of Royal Soldier Sect had reached the point of perfection, which even the 10,000 Art Sect was far behind. On the battlefield there were many miracles. The strongest army of Royal Soldier Sect was a monument that stood on top of countless piles of bones after countless trials of blood and fire. The most powerful sect in the 9 regions was Shengjing Sect. It implemented the 9-region strategy, exerting its fists and feet all over the continent, either openly bullying or secretly suppressing. For a period of time, it even acted without scruples. However, it never dared to openly provoke Royal Soldier Sect, because Shengjing Sect people were very clear that if the people from Royal Soldier Sect were to come down, no one would be able to get away with it. In fact, before the rise of Royal Soldier Sect, many 9 regions people had experienced the age of chaos and lost their civilization inheritance. They always thought that the war between cultivators didn't need to pay too much attention to strategy. The so-called strategy was only built on the basis of a group. If there were many people, there would be a need for strategy. Between cultivators, the difference in individual strength was so great that it was enough to make up for any difference in numbers. 10,000 Foundation Establishment cultivators would not be able to withstand a casual attack from a nascent soul cultivator. Even after setting up the formation for a long time, they still could not stop the formation that the other party had carefully designed. Similarly, different cultivators had different cultivation techniques and different magic treasures. If they forcefully gathered everything together, not to mention sincere cooperation, just the existence of each other could affect each other. For example, it was difficult for the lightning battle body and the first sky true water to coexist. With so many problems, coupled with the fact that the number of cultivators had always been small, the so-called art of war and battle formation were rarely paid attention to. Then, the rise of Royal Soldier Sect shattered the common sense of cultivators. No one knew how these barbaric warriors, who had always been incompatible with the traditional concept of civilization, could become so powerful. People only knew that after the rise of Royal Soldier Sect, no one could compete with them in battle formation. Very good, the battle preparation is complete. Now we can proceed to the next step. After completing the integration of the army, Xiang Liang was neither happy nor sad. He just silently adjusted the tactical plan in his mind. The plan to divide the army into 3 was abolished, and a more detailed plan was quickly brewing. In the original plan, there was no soul-snatching step, because even for the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, suppressing thousands of elites at once was still a big burden. In the next battle, his strength would at least be halved. However, on the other hand, to be able to command these thousands of people as if they were his own arm, Xiang Liang felt that this step was right. Because with such a strong army, he could appear in an impossible place at an impossible time. The next step is Luojin Town. It's really boring. A Shengjing sect cultivator dressed in luxurious clothing faced the fiery red sunset and stretched his body. In the border town of Golden City, Luojin Town, tens of thousands of heavy troops had gathered. The originally prosperous town had been transformed into a war fortress. The people walking in the town were no longer busy and substantial town residents, but were fully armed soldiers. As the frontline town of Golden City in Flaming Valley, the war could come at any time. However, on the other hand, after a dangerous fight, no one thought that the war would come so soon. The border between Golden City and Flaming Valley was a long line, and Luojin Town was just one of the points. Although it was close to a geographical junction, once it was breached, Flaming Valley could directly drive into the hinterland of Golden City. However, according to the judgment of the Feng Shui master of Golden City, right now, the law of the Rocky Mountain was distorted. Endless rock beasts wreaked havoc in the mountain, making it difficult for anyone to pass through. And with the intelligence of that group of barbarian soldiers of Flaming Valley, even if there were thousands of them, they would only end up dead in the Rocky Mountain, so much so that there was no need for Golden City to send troops to resist. In this way, the border town instead became the peaceful rear. Although there were heavy troops in the town compared to the real front line, the atmosphere was undoubtedly much more relaxed. If not, how could Xingjing sect team have the chance to station here? Humph, senior brother Jianglu's unplanned sneak attack has caused us to be like street rats in Golden City. A dignified gold spirit being rushed to the front line to command, moreover he has no real power and is completely a figurehead. This 5 spirits power struggle is simply inexplicable. After the cultivator stretched his waist, he immediately put on an indignant face. Looking at the celestial soldiers and generals in the town, his heart was filled with irritation. Beside him, his 2 junior brothers simply ignored him and sat cross-legged opposite to each other. Between them, a magical power congealed on the chessboard, fighting fiercely. Senior brother Luo, complain less. Your state of mind is not stable, it's not good for your cultivation. Cultivation, F*King cultivation. Luo Sihua cursed and then turned around to kick over his junior brother's chessboard, idling around all day long. Is this how you cultivate? After the chessboard was kicked over, the 2 junior brothers were not annoyed. With a wave of their hands, the original chessboard came into being again. However, the position of the chess pieces was somewhat different. Ah, junior brother son, you cheated? How could I? Senior brother, you remember wrong. Seeing that his 2 junior brothers were completely obsessed with the chessboard, Luo Sihua, who had expected better from them, stamped his foot, causing half of Golden Town to tremble. Then, amidst the laughter of his 2 junior brothers, Luo Sihua soared into the sky and looked down at the ground. There was no purpose, just a habit. As an elite inner court disciple of Xingjing sect, it was a habit to constantly climb up. People often said that Xingjing sect was the #1 sect in 9 regions, and to be able to join the sect was a supreme glory. However, who knew the heavy pressure behind this glory? 9 regions was big and full of strange things, but like Qianghua, Xiangliang, Zhoumumu, how many of these talented people were there? How many millions of cultivators were there in 9 regions? However, how many of them were blessed by heaven with heavenly spirit root? Luo Sihua was not blessed by heaven. His cultivation qualification relied on massive resources and a bit of luck in exchange for 10 complete spirit root. Compared to those cultivators with natural spirit root, he was already a notch inferior. Not to mention that 10 complete spirit root itself was not the top spirit root. After 100 years of cultivation, he had just reached the peak Shudan stage. If he wanted to go further, relying on his own efforts had little hope, and thus he needed the support of the sect. However, although Xingjing sect was rich, they never squandered. They were generous to their disciples but not indulgent. Unless they proved their own value, the sect would never make a meaningless investment. Luo Sihua needed the sect's investment, therefore he must prove his own value. In his view, joining Cheonghua's team was a shortcut to prove his value. In his 100 years of cultivation, his strength was not that strong, but his accumulated experience was not trivial. Compared to those talented junior brothers and sisters, although his strength was not as good, his experience was enough to make up for it. Because of this, he could have a certain position in Cheonghua's team. For this hard-won opportunity, Luo Sihua cherished it very much. Therefore, he especially could not bear to see his fellow junior brothers idling around. In his view, every minute and every second was so precious. The air was filled with the smell of opportunity. Even if he was sent to a useless place by Golden City, he still firmly believed that he could make a difference. He would definitely succeed. He would never be so mediocre forever. In the path of cultivation, not everything was destined from the beginning. Self-improvement and perseverance would always be rewarded. It was true that since ancient times, most of the people who ascended to heaven were geniuses, but could it be that mediocre people had no chance? There were. Although they were rare, there were still people who rose to heaven with ordinary talent. Although they were rare, the hope had not been cut off. And if the predecessors could do it, why couldn't he? As long as he seized every opportunity, there was always a glimmer of hope to defy the heaven and change his fate. Although it was only a meager glimmer like the setting sun that was about to sink into the night, but, as long as he could grasp it. Luo Sihua slightly frowned and stretched out his hand toward the horizon, as if everything was under his control. Then he suddenly felt a pain in his palm, a piercing pain. Was it because he thought too much that his heart's Tao was unstable, which led to the backlash of his method? In a flash, Luo Sihua's mind surged with countless conjectures. For him to reach where he was today with ordinary talent, taking risks was inevitable, and the side effects could come at any time. However, he soon realized that his guess was wrong. The pain in his palm did not come from himself, but from an external force. Under the external force, his palm had been divided into two halves. Bright red blood gushed out from the cross-section, and his bones and muscles could be clearly seen. At the same time, his field of vision seemed to be cut off from the middle. Before the darkness shrouded him, he seemed to see his own gray brain. The enemy Chi-Ho has been eliminated. In the void, a cold voice could only be heard by the one who spoke. Then the same cold voice sounded. Full force assault. Chapter 413. The border town of Golden City was lost, and the enemy troops marched straight into the surrounding thousands of miles, setting the prairie ablaze with the flames of war. How many years has it been since Golden City had a war in its own territory? How many years has it been since the people of Golden City witnessed the flames of war? After living a life of luxury for so many years, who could remember the hardships of their ancestors? When the flames of war burned, Golden City was caught off guard. The places where Flaming Valley passed through were not mobilized for war, so they had no ability to resist. The main force of the golden-clad army was placed in the border area, so they had no time to turn back. However, when the mobile forces went out to meet the enemy, they were repeatedly defeated. The momentum of the surprise troops of Flaming Valley was like a rainbow, unstoppable. They repeatedly tore at each other in the territory of Golden City, which shook the whole country of Golden City. The morale of the front line was shaken, and the war repeatedly failed. Almost in the blink of an eye, the stalemate between Golden City and Flaming Valley was broken, tilting toward the originally weak Flaming Valley. At the same time, the territory of Golden City was in a state of apprehension, and the higher-ups of Golden City were even more panicked. The panic did not come from the elusive barbarian army in the territory, but from the high and mighty master of Golden City. Even the people far outside the main city could feel an astonishing baleful aura, which made them tremble in fear. The successive defeats had already caused the sovereign king's subordinates to feel impatient. In Golden City, the misty capital city high above the clouds, the king sitting on the throne looked down at the tens of thousands of stone steps and the kneeling ministers. His cold eyes made the ministers feel as if there was a thorn in their backs. The king did not need to open his mouth to make the people keep quiet out of fear. However, under the fear they had to break the silence. Because the king did not need useless ministers, and at this time the one who needed to prove their value the most was the leading general. This surprise troop of Flaming Valley is indeed unexpected, but after several battles their losses are quite heavy, and their situation is exposed. At present they have less than 1,000 people and most of them are injured. What's even more fatal is the lack of supplies, so they can only fight to fight. In addition, in the territory of Golden City, they need a lot of supplies to maintain their combat power, which makes them unable to stop for even a moment. Not to mention they seem to be lurking in the dark, but in our country, how could it be easy for a barbarian army to completely hide? As long as we give them time, we will be able to lure them to reveal their flaws. Our military strength is still far superior to Flaming Valley, and at that time. In time? On the stone steps, the person on the throne coldly interrupted his subordinates' incessant chatter. Yes. Facing the gaze of the king, the general supported his trembling body and said, "The enemy is the elite soldiers of the Flaming Valley, and they have the help of the fire spirits. Their abilities are strange. Although our army is good at fighting in an open and above-board manner, it is impossible to guard against their sneak attacks. Unless we delimit the area, strengthen the walls and clear the fields, and besiege them with the army, then it will not take long to force them into a dead end." As soon as the general's voice fell, a ray of heavenly light descended. The golden beam of light was like a divine punishment that fell on the head of the general. The leader of millions of soldiers of Golden City could not withstand it. With a scream, all the bones in his body crackled and blood gushed out from his 7 orifices. He had been suppressed. What a joke. The cold voice of the master of Golden City echoed down the stone steps. For a group of lowly ants, you want to fortify the walls and clear the fields, burning the magnificent Golden City to the ground? One Flaming Valley is already like this. If the other 3 join forces, could it be that my Golden City will be scorched to the ground everywhere? One fire spirit has already made you panic, forcing you to use self-harm tactics. If the 4 spirits come together, how can you resist? Do you want me to offer my head to beg for peace? Leaving a mediocre person like you in the position of commander is simply a joke. While speaking, the golden beam of light became even more blazing. The suppressed general could not even scream. He had the ability, but in front of the king he was still vulnerable. And around him, although there were high-ranking officials and dignitaries, each and every one of them had extraordinary skills, none of them dared to have the ability to save him. However, just when the general thought he was going to die, a powerful palm appeared in his field of vision. Like a dark cloud that blotted out the sky, it blocked the golden beam of light and also dispelled the suppression force of the king. Enough. With a faint enough sound, the golden beam of suppression from the king was propped up by the man with one hand, unable to fall even a little bit. Everyone present recognized him. He was the metal element blood spirit of Golden City. His name was Jianglu, and he had the power to topple the mountains and overturn the seas. Except for the supreme and invincible king of Golden City, no one could be his opponent. The enemy is the king of battle array. Whether it's a one-on-one fight or a battle array, they are the strongest in this world. Your gold-clad army alone could not possibly be his match. The enemy is a lion or a tiger, but your men are just sheep and rabbits. Even if you force them to death, it would be of no use. With that, he propped up the golden beam with one hand. Although his voice was not disorderly, the bones in his body crackled, and the white slate under his feet also silently cracked. Obviously, the Supreme King was not lenient to the offense of the blood spirit. Jianglu, however, was not in a hurry. If you want to fight against such an elite, you have to send out your elites. Your gold-clad army is not enough, but it's not like you don't have other cards to play. The question is, how long do you want to wait? The 5 spirits' power struggle in this world had its own pattern. The blood spirit represented the pinnacle of individual fighting power, while the masters of the blood spirit had huge power. The power of Golden City was the strongest in this world. Their 1 million army was enough to crush any blood spirit on the battlefield. However, on the other hand, if the blood spirit didn't fight head-on with them, even their 1 million army would be useless. At the same time, Golden City also had the strongest blood spirit. Cheonghua's Xingjing sect team, without relying on anyone's help, could launch a surprise attack against the leaders of Harmony River and Eternal Tree. Right now, even though the team suffered a heavy blow, their strength was still the number 1 in this world. As long as they used it well, there was no enemy that they could not solve. The question was, how long did Golden City plan to keep this strongest trump card? Very well, since you wholeheartedly want to fight, I'll give you a chance. With that, the golden beam dissipated, and the huge force suddenly disappeared. Jianglu involuntarily staggered a few steps, looking quite embarrassed. However, he actually looked happy. So, you agree to unseal the king of the gold spirit? Against the lead disciple of Royal Soldier sect, Jianglu actually had no assurance. He could lead the team to launch a surprise attack on Zhan Zai, Zhou Mumu, and even Wang Lu, but it was absolutely impossible for him to launch a surprise attack on Xiang Liang. The other party was a real genius in war. All the methods of war that he learned in Xingjing sect were like child's games in the eyes of the other party. As for fighting with strength, with the lead disciple of Royal Soldier sect, This joke was really not funny at all. The strength of Xiang Liang in Jiang Lu's view even surpassed that of Wang Lu. If there was anyone who could really win against Xiang Liang in this five spirits power struggle, it was only Qianghua. Only the lead disciple of Xingjing sect had the absolute strength to suppress everything. With the power of today's Qianghua, once she fully released, she could sweep away all the enemies in this world. Even if the other lead disciples joined forces, it would still be difficult for them to win. Unfortunately, the design of this immortal dreamland actually sealed Qianghua as soon as she entered this world. In a one-on-one fight, even without the blood-marked divine spear, a Yi was not inferior to him. If he could help, it would indeed be like adding wings to a tiger. But now, the alliance of the three forces is too late to be our enemy, so how could they help us to contend against Flaming Valley? Qianghua smiled again. However, this time, that peerless smile actually made Jianglu somewhat faintly cold. If Flaming Valley takes the initiative to provoke Harmony River, with that person's temper, he would definitely not sit idly by. Senior sister, although the people of Flaming Valley are not resourceful enough, they're not stupid enough to fill in the sideline when they go all out against Golden City, right? Qianghua's smile remained the same. Do they want to go all out against Golden City this time? Jianglu was startled and then immediately realized. Senior sister, you mean, Zhanzai can drive the tiger to swallow the wolf? Why can't we imitate him? Last time your surprise attack seriously injured the sacred leaf of Eternal Tree. I think this should be a heaven-sent opportunity for Flaming Valley. Wood gives birth to fire, and with the power of the wood spirit, Flaming Valley really has the strength to contend against Golden City. Senior sister, the art of war of Royal Soldier Sect has always been unpredictable. This unexpected army that wreaked havoc in the territory of Golden City can be proved. Under his command, it's not unusual for Flaming Valley to do anything. Qianghua said, raised her head and then quietly watched Jianglu. The only problem now is, junior brother Jianglu, these elders want you to cultivate your shrewdness and not to easily get angry. I wonder if you can still get angry? Chapter 4:14. Eternal Tree, the residence of Sacred Leaf. In addition to the necessary living space, the leader of Eternal Tree also had a tree hole in the middle of this towering tree. The tree hole condensed the essence of the tree, and the wood element's spiritual energy was so rich that it was almost substantial. Moreover, the four walls had been tempered for thousands of years and were indestructible, making it the best place for cultivation. Shaman was naturally quiet. Her cultivation was mainly based on meditation. Usually, she would only put it into practice after careful consideration. This tree hole had been passed down to her for many years, and most of the time, it was quiet and did not emit any sound. However, now the inside of the hole was like a rolling thunder. Although there were many layers of array outside the hole to eliminate the sound, there was still a little leakage, which caused the residents of Eternal Tree to raise their eyebrows. Boom. Wrong again. This spell should have 36 changes to meet the needs of different situations. You can only produce 10 changes at most and the rest can't be used at all. Zhanzai's voice was soft but stern. His pair of thunder-like eyes instantly saw all the changes of the spell, and the 10,000 methods comprehension allowed him to analyze and deduce in the first place and give a reasonable suggestion. Most people, when they met such a teacher, would be convinced, but Zhanzai's student had her own opinion. 36 changes are flashy but impractical, and in order to make it complicated, I have to spend 10% more magical power, which is unnecessary. To be able to carry 10 changes, the effect of this spell has been exhausted, so there's no need to demand more. Shaman said and slowly put away the vine in her hand. Just now, this humble vine had changed in her hand. It could drill into the rocks and take root and germinate, making hard things collapse from the inside, and it could also bind the opponent, making it difficult for the opponent to struggle. The vine was thorny and highly toxic and the spell had many changes. Although Zhanzai was still not satisfied, Shaman decided to stop here. Regarding Shaman's rebuttal, Zhanzai just frowned and deduced again with the power of primordial spirit. After a long time he slowly nodded. That makes sense. This spell, in your opinion, ends here. After a pause, Zhanzai smiled and said, it's an eye-opener. If there were others who saw this scene, perhaps they would be so surprised that they couldn't close their jaws. In the study of spell, the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, who always had her eyes on the top, actually succumbed to the opinion of others? Moreover, she even knew how to praise the other party. However, to Zhanzai, it didn't matter whose opinion was the most important. What mattered was whose opinion was more correct. The lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect was arrogant because few people were more correct than him. However, the woman in front of him, although she was just a puppet in the immortal dreamland, she was exceptionally intelligent and talented. Although her inheritance was coarse, far less than that of the 10,000 Arts sect, her perception was enough to make up for everything. At first, Zhan Zai thought it was a one-sided teaching, but it soon turned into an equal competition. Although Shaman's spell had made great progress, didn't Zhan Zai also gain a lot? It had been a very long time since Zhan Zai had seen a woman who had such rapport with him. For a moment, looking at Shaman's sweaty and kind face, his heart was suddenly moved. At the same time, the woman smiled sweetly, unable to conceal the shock in her heart. She had thought that this wood spirit follower was a hard-working bookworm who didn't understand the ways of the world, but in their daily interactions he took care of her meticulously. Shaman, of course, could not imagine that Zhan Zai, as the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, was placed high hopes on by the sect, and in recent years he had painstakingly studied the ways of the world. Although his innate talent was not good, he had memorized countless books on how to conduct oneself and how to deal with people. Coupled with his meticulous academic research, he had indeed moved Shaman. The subtle atmosphere lasted for a moment before Shaman suddenly woke up and hurriedly shook her head. Our magical power is almost exhausted, let's call it a day. Zhan Zai was about to nod when a strange voice suddenly sounded. Magical power is almost exhausted? Heaven is really helping me. The next moment, it was a prairie fire. Within the territory of Golden City, the flames of war were flying. The invasion of Flaming Valley made this most powerful force finally wake up to the fact that the war has come. The Golden City people began to enter the era of war. The bustling city began to be transformed into a fortress, the lazy people began to train and cultivate, and the flashy but impractical tools were replaced with sharp blades. Even in the face of the surprise troops of Flaming Valley, most of the arrangement was useless. However, Golden City was still like an armed giant beast, which began to show its edge. At the same time, long before the invasion of Flaming Valley, a surprise troop that had penetrated deep into the enemy's territory was also looking for its own prey. The King of Harmony River had not successfully hunted for several days. His goal was the metal element blood spirit, which was the Xingjing sect people. However, for several days, let alone Xingjing sect people, even the usual golden-clad celestial general couldn't be caught. Golden City seemed to have reversed its meridians, completely changing its mode of operation, which was difficult to fathom. A Yi who was lurking in the territory became more and more irritated. Tisk, it's too boring to wait like this. Why don't I find a city and directly massacre it with my blood spear, and then write down the word King of Harmony River? Regarding a yes suggestion, the accompanying blood spirit Zhou Mumu could only sigh. When exactly are you going to play? Do you think it's fun to penetrate deep into a dangerous place alone? It's not fun. A Yi answered without hesitation, which surprised Zhou Mumu. Along the way, A Yi was in high spirits and often smiled, which made people feel that he had been addicted to this hunting game and could not extricate himself. Every time he successfully hunted a Xingjing sect cultivator, his joyous appearance was by no means fake. But he actually said it was not fun? War is not a child's play, of course it's not fun. Alone in a dangerous place, if I were to be surrounded like a dumpling, my reputation would be ruined, which is even more not fun. A Yi vigorously shook his head and repeatedly denied it. This actually aroused Zhou Mumu's interest. You've always boasted that you're handsome and invincible, how could you be afraid? No one can be invincible because of their handsomeness. Only invincible people are handsome. A Yi softly said, I'm such a handsome person, how could I not understand this truth? Right now, I single-handedly penetrate deep into Golden City, which is always taking risks. But if I don't do this, how could I be worthy of my seriously injured wife? Hearing him mentioning Shaman, Zhou Mumu couldn't help but become angry. I really don't know if you're really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. Do you think you're worthy of her by taking risks alone? She's seriously injured, so what she needs is not how many heads you bring back to claim credit, but careful and considerate care. You guys have even given birth to a child, yet you don't even understand this basic truth. A Yi shrugged. How could I not understand? It's nothing more than a woman's trick. Unfortunately, although the truth is the truth, I can't do things like being considerate. Do you see excuses? You women always think that as long as a man puts his heart into it, he can do anything. Unfortunately, many things that you think are easy are as difficult as ascending to heaven for a man. A Yi laughed. I actually have no strong points. Although I am respected as the King of Harmony River, I don't know the slightest bit about governing a country. Farming, fish herding, construction, forging. I don't know any of them. If I wasn't born with a good bloodline, I would be worse than a small fish. Hearing how serious he was, Zhou couldn't help but feel embarrassed. She wanted to say something to comfort him, but she didn't know what to say. However, it's precisely because I don't know anything since I was a child that I deeply understand the truth. If there's anything in this world that I'm good at, then I must firmly grasp it and cherish this talent more than anything else. In order to settle down, I have nothing else to rely on. Yi said and picked up the spear he was used to using. Fortunately, although I've been stupid and mischievous since I was a child, I eventually found out that I still have one thing that I'm good at. And now, I'm going to use my only specialty to fulfill my wish. Upon hearing this, Zhou felt a sense of loss in her heart. This naughty and mischievous master before her seemed to have become a bit more pleasing to the eye. However, Ye's next words were like a heavy blow to her heart. As for Shaman, during her recuperation period, there will be someone accompanying her to take care of and comfort her. Zhou found it difficult to understand. Do you know what you're talking about? Although Zhan Zai is by no means a perverted person, but she is after all your wife. That's why I have to think about it for her, but what she wants, I can't give it to her. Shaman has been reading poetry and books since she was a child, and she likes literature and art the most. Unfortunately, I don't know anything about this, but the wood spirit is obviously very knowledgeable, Yi said. His smile seemed to have disappeared. My only specialty is to leave things to the real experts. I'm not good at governing a country, so I let Shaman represent me. Even in battle, I'm not good at commanding, so the generals divide the power, and I'm willing to be the vanguard. It's the same reason. It's not the same reason. Zhou grabbed Ye's collar and lifted him up with one hand. Your brain is really bad. How can you push your own wife to outsiders? You're sick, aren't you? Haha, since I was a child, I don't know how many people have said that to me. I've long known that I'm sick in the head, so I'll give things to people who are not sick to do it. Rotten wood can't be carved. Zhou let go of Yi, but she was still angry and picked him up with another hand. No, just thinking about it makes me angry. If I didn't see it, then fine, but since I saw it, I can't just sit back and do nothing. Otherwise, my mind won't be clear. Zhou said and began to prepare her words. I remember you said before that the greatest blessing in life is to marry a good wife. Are you willing to let your wife throw herself into the arms of others? Moreover, what do you think of Shaman? She loves you so much, but you. Yi said, Shaman has never liked me. What? I did say that my greatest blessing is to marry a good wife, but I never said that Shaman's greatest blessing is to marry me. She married me because of the marriage between Eternal Tree and Harmony River, so she had no other choice. Otherwise, how could such a delicate woman like her marry me? Although the marriage was involuntary for both of us, after all, I used her lifetime of misfortune in exchange for my lifetime of happiness. When I was a child, my elders taught me to distinguish between gratitude and grudges, and to repay kindness with kindness. Therefore, I will do anything to compensate her. And now there's only one thing I have to do. Zhou didn't know how to persuade him. She herself was also ignorant about the relationship between men and women. She just subconsciously felt that Yi had made an exceptionally stupid mistake, but she couldn't say it out loud. Perhaps if Wang Lu was here, he would be able to break through Ye's ignorance, but she hated that she didn't have that ability. However, she couldn't just give up. Listen, your idea is fundamentally wrong. Although I can't explain it to you in a few words, first of all you have to. Just as Zhou was trying to persuade him, a green light suddenly appeared in the palm of Ye's hand, and an emerald green leaf rose up. Zhou recognized that it was the spell that Eternal Tree used to transmit information. When Yi saw the emerald green leaf secret letter, his face turned extremely ugly. Zhou had never seen Yi silent for so long. He always liked to be noisy and lively, and his mouth was never idle. If he had nothing to say, he would always find something to say. But now, his lips were tightly pursed and his face was livid. Now there are two things that I have to do. With that, he clenched his hand and the emerald green leaf was broken. Flaming Valley, I've come to extinguish your flame. Chapter 4:15. The blazing sun, the blood-red earth, and the clouds of fire were like a sharp knife, stretching from the horizon to the top of their heads. Within the territory of Golden City, there was an austere atmosphere. Flaming Valley's army had stirred up the most powerful country in the world without peace. The panic of war had spread and it was unstoppable. And at this time, There were still 9 days before the deadline set by the Master of Golden City for Jianglu. One day ago, Gold Spirit Jianglu received a death order in front of the Master of Golden City that within 10 days, the head of Fire Spirit Xiang Liang must be taken. Now, although only 1 day had passed, the arrogance of Flaming Valley was rampant, yet Jianglu still didn't make his move. Time was precious, so people had to guess, what exactly did he want to do? The Master of Golden City said that if he didn't see the head within 10 days, he would be forever conferred the title of the King of Gold Spirit. This was absolutely not a lie. At the same time, those who disappointed him would never have a good end. Although the Xingjing sect team led by Jianglu was powerful, it was still difficult to face the wrath of the Master of Golden City. So, in the face of such a desperate situation, what exactly did Jianglu want to do? It didn't take too long. On the second day the answer was revealed. In Misty Capital the sky trembled and the earth cracked. This floating king's mansion sprinkled dust and sand like a storm, blotting out the sky. The wrath of the king, disdainfully looking down on all living beings. Say it again? Under the white jade stone steps, the group of ministers knelt down. The leader was trembling with fear. Fear had blurred his consciousness, but the majesty of the king drove him to obey the order and repeat what he just said. Gold Spirit Jianglu defected from Flaming Valley and was personally conferred the title of Flaming Fire Spirit by the King of Flaming Valley. The Master of Golden City is muddle-headed and tyrannical, obstinate and self-opinionated. He used absolute conditions to coerce his Gold Spirit subordinates, and seeing that the title of the King of Gold Spirit has no hope to be unsealed. Thus, in a fit of rage he defected to the enemy. Senior Sister Cheonghua, you ask me if I have cultivated my shrewdness for many years, can I still get angry? I wonder if my answer now can satisfy you? In a fit of rage, any radical behavior was not unusual. However, only shrewdness could let people get rid of the shackles of emotion, clearly see the current situation and make rational judgments. The Master of Golden City set the limit of 10 days to make Jianglu complete the impossible task. His intention to forever confer the title of the King of Gold Spirit was clear. However, the Master of Golden City had ruled for many years, and what he wanted to do had never changed. Even if Jianglu had the ability to offer the head of the Fire Spirit, the Master of Golden City could always find more and more tricky problems, forcing the Gold Spirits into a dead end step by step. Therefore there was only one road in front of Jianglu, to break away from the Master of Golden City. As for Flaming Valley, it was his first choice to seek refuge. He had not long ago led a raid on Harmony River and the Eternal Tree, so the path of alliance had long been broken. Of his eyes of spell. Of senior of 10 how of a valley, how of spirit he could, of sect of valley? Fulflin he let and all. Not to mention that I, Jianglu, have always treated people with sincerity. The one who followed me to ignite the prairie fire in the Eternal Tree is the real Red Flame Guard of Flaming Valley. Even if Senior Brother's eyes are several levels higher, he still can't see the second possibility. Then, relying on a surprise attack, I seriously injured Shaman, snatched the essence of the Eternal Tree, and threw it into Flaming Valley to ignite the burning heaven flame. This further consolidated my position in Flaming Valley, and then further involved Eternal Tree and Harmony River in the battle, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Senior Sister Cheonghua, your script is really admirable. In Flaming Valley Jianglu had changed into the skin of Flaming Valley. His whole body was like a rock that was baked in the heat, and his perseverance contained infinite explosive force. Behind him, a group of unruly elites of Flaming Valley quietly stood there. In the previous surprise attack, Jianglu took the lead and successfully won their respect with his unmatched bravery and heroism. Next, junior brothers and sisters, it's all up to you. With that, he lowered his head and sighed as if he found it funny. The Master of Golden City is indeed a man of his word. The 10 days agreement is still valid. Inside Golden City, another fortress had fallen into enemy hands. Because the surprise attack of Flaming Valley was wreaking havoc in the territory, all the armies in the territory were on high alert. A day ago, there was intelligence indicating that the surprise attack of Flaming Valley appeared in a certain place. By chance coincidence, an army risked their lives to delay them for a period of time, so that they could not evacuate in time. Immediately afterward, the warriors of Flaming Valley were besieged by the army. The surprise attack of Flaming Valley was amazing, so the gold-clad army needed the support of the surrounding troops to reinforce the encirclement. Therefore, the troops from several fortresses were dispatched for stability. Then, overnight, the surprise attack of Flaming Valley broke through the encirclement and went straight to the empty Golden Fortress. Because the main force was dispatched, the Flaming Valley barbarians easily captured it, killed all the garrison troops, plundered all the supplies and fled. Golden City was the richest in the world and its national power was strong, so a fortress was insignificant. However, the terrifying thing was that the already exhausted Flaming Valley barbarians obtained the supplies from the fortress and became full of vigor. No, they even became even more terrifying than before. The barrenness of Flaming Valley made it difficult for the barbarian warriors to even equip their weapons. At this time, with the luxurious weapons of Golden City, it was tantamount to adding wings to a tiger. However, after this battle, the commander-in-chief Xiang Liang actually planned to retreat and lead his army back to Flaming Valley. Indeed, the morale of the surprise attack team had risen to its peak, and with the help of the equipment, their strength was almost doubled. In the territory of Golden City, there was basically no army that could compete with them head-on. If they continued to engage in guerrilla warfare, unless Golden City strengthened their defense on a large scale or dispatched their real elite force, they would be helpless. However, as the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, how could Xiang Liang's vision be so short-sighted? Compared to leading an elite army to complete a special task, his real value lay in commanding the tens of thousands of troops of Flaming Valley to devour everything. This special guerrilla warfare was a necessary procedure for him to truly prove his value. The king of Flaming Valley delegated military power to him, but the elders of Flaming Valley still had doubts about this. Xiang Liang was about to use a miraculous victory to dispel their doubts. So far, Xiang Liang's achievements were enough to shut anyone's mouth. The next thing to do was to return to Flaming Valley, climb his own strength to the peak and then there's no then you can't go anywhere. Deep in the mountain valley, next to the commander-in-chief's camp, there was suddenly a strange voice that shouldn't have been there. Such a sudden attack, even if it was the personal army of the king of Flaming Valley, it would be difficult for them to maintain their calm. However, the barbarian warriors under Xiang Liang's command were like him, indifferent like a piece of stone, completely indifferent to the voice. For a group of puppet warriors whose souls were scattered, even if the sky fell and the earth cracked, they wouldn't bat an eyelid. As for Xiang Liang himself, he had a psychological quality that was stronger than steel. The moment he heard the voice, he immediately thought of everything and made a response. Come on. As he said that, he flicked his fingers forward and several streams of air like blades shot forward. Although the spell was small, it showed Xiang Liang's high-spirited fighting intent. In the face of the challenge, the disciples of Royal Soldier Sect were bound to move forward bravely. Even if this sudden sound meant that his whereabouts had been grasped and the opponent was about to launch an unprecedented surprise attack, he still dared to make a move. The enemy was in the dark while he was in the light, so the situation was very unfavorable. However, Xiang Liang was not afraid in the slightest. Instead, he was secretly happy because the opponent actually came to his door. For someone who was crazy about fighting, this was a pie that fell from the sky. Even if this pie would be very hot. Although the invisible blade shot out from his fingers and stabbed into a dense forest in the valley, before the blade could reach it, it was bounced off by a strong force. In the void, the figure of two Xingjing sect cultivators appeared, one man and one woman. The two of them were holding a treasure chest, which opened wide and spat out a round shield, blocking the spell that Xiang Liang casually flicked out. After a few light sounds, the round shield was torn apart, and the invisible blade also disintegrated. It was just that one side casually made a move, while the other side was already prepared. The difference in strength was undoubtedly evident in this blow. Do it. Holding the treasure chest, Wanyu didn't waver in the slightest as she coldly shouted. At the same time, in this quiet deep mountain valley, the sound of flesh and blood colliding and cutting began to come. The sound was monotonous, but because of this monotonous sound, it was even more terrifying. The souls of the barbarian warriors under Xiang Liang had already scattered. Even if they suffered the greatest pain, they would not waste their strength to scream and wail. However, when they fought, they would instinctively shout and roar. Right now, this monotonous sound could only explain one thing. In the valley camp, there was a one-sided massacre. At the same time as the commander of the army, Xiang Liang also had a way to overlook the overall situation. Therefore, he was very clear that his elite troops were rapidly decreasing. In front of the surprise attack, the barbarian elites seemed to be vulnerable. However, Xiang Liang became more and more excited. To be able to slaughter the barbarian elites like this, there were only two possibilities in the territory of Golden City: the personal guard of the Master of Golden City and the Xingjing sect team. However, the personal guard never left the Master of Golden City, and the Master of Golden City also never left the Misty Capital City. Thus, the one that appeared this time could only be the Xingjing sect team. At the same time, the unique stench of Xingjing sect team in the air also made him firm in his judgment. Xingjing sect team, I've been waiting for you for a long time. In this five spirits power struggle, the power of the gold spirit, which was the Xingjing sect team, was so strong that it made one's hair stand on end. The whole team joined in, and overall, their strength was comparable to the sum of the other four teams. However, the strength of this team was mainly because the main character of the team, Qianghua, was invincible. If the main character was replaced, the power of this team would be greatly reduced. Right now, the fact that Qianghua was imprisoned by the Master of Golden City was no longer a secret among the high-level officials. In addition to Qianghua, Xiang Liang didn't care who was in charge of this team. Therefore, Xingjing sect team came at the right time. Since they came, they could forget about leaving. After this battle, these people could not go anywhere. Chapter 416. Amazing! In the deep mountain valley, Wangyuan heartily exclaimed in admiration. In front of him, the tranquil valley was in a mess. The rocks were broken, the vegetation was scorched, and the stream water was blood red. More than 10 fellow disciples at this time were either lying down or kneeling on the ground. All of them had lost the power to fight, and most of them were even unconscious with heavy internal injuries. Fortunately, there was no irreparable loss. And this was not because the opponent was lenient, but because before the action, several senior brothers with higher attainments in spell casting joined hands to cast the spell, sharing the same boat in wind and rain. Thus, during the fight they could share the damage with each other. This was the most powerful guarantee to prevent the opponent from breaking through. If not for this sharing the same boat in wind and rain, at this time, there would be no Xingjing sect people alive. However, all of this was done by the opponent alone. Xiang Liang's barbarians were massacred, so obviously he couldn't react in time. Alone he bravely stepped forward. Facing the encirclement of more than 10 Xingjing sect elites, he was calm and fearless and calmly faced the battle. In less than half an hour, all the opponents were crippled, and he achieved an overwhelming victory. Therefore, even though he was the opponent, Wangyuan still couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. This kind of means, among his peers, perhaps only Qianghua could match it. The other senior brothers and sisters of Xingjing sect, such as senior brother Jianglu, were a lot inferior. No wonder the reputation of Royal Soldier sect in the Wanxian League was not high, but their revered status had never been shaken by anyone. They were too good at fighting. Through less than half an hour of fighting, Wangyuan had already seen the details of Xiang Liang. Purely on paper, Xiang Liang was not outstanding, because his magical power was only at peak Shudan stage. Moreover, there was an obvious sluggishness in the operation of his magical power. Of course, this was also a matter of course. Xiang Liang's actual cultivation base had already reached King Pill. However, in order to be able to enter this immortal dreamland, he used the secret method of his sect to suppress the King Pill in order to meet the entry condition. In fact, in addition to Xiang Liang, Xingjing sect's Qianghua and Kunlun sect's Zhou Mumu also used a similar method. However, the technique of suppressing the King Pill and deceiving the group of immortal tombs was very mysterious and delicate. Even Kunlun sect, who was very good at this, was somewhat uncertain. In order to ensure that Zhou Mumu's spell could be used skillfully, they accidentally suppressed it a bit, which Zhou Mumu's actual fighting strength was greatly reduced. And this was not long after Zhou Mumu broke through the King Pill. If her cultivation base was deeper, the suppression would be even more difficult, and when she reached the high-level King Pill stage, she would not be able to suppress it. This was, and the King sect's King Pill, he thought. This King Royal Soldier sect had never been known for their exquisite spells. No matter what they did, their means were simple and crude, plain and vigorous. Xiang Liang was ordered by his sect to develop the immortal dreamland and was forcibly suppressed from the Jindan stage to the peak Shudan stage. Thanks to his solid foundation, which was ranked in the forefront of the several lead disciples of the five uniques, he was able to survive. If Zhan Zai and Zhou Mumu were to be used with the same spell, perhaps their King Pill would have been broken on the spot and their Jade Mansion would have collapsed. As for Xingjing sect, there was a reason why Xingjing sect could dominate the Wanxian League. It was not as simple as being rich and overbearing. At this time, senior sister Qianghua's strength could sweep this world because when she entered the sect, she was still a peak Shudan, but now she was a Taoist master of King Pill. Even her junior sisters and brothers didn't understand this mystery, but at least they knew that senior sister Cheonghua was invincible in this world. However, Xiang Liang obviously didn't have this kind of luck. On paper, his strength was probably on the same level as Zhou Mumu, but in a real fight, Wang Yuanyun helplessly sighed. Even 3 Zhou Mumu might not be able to beat Xiang Liang. This guy is simply not a human. No matter how bad Zhou Mumu was at fighting, she was, after all, the lead disciple of Kunlun sect. At least, Jianglu was not sure that he could win against her in a one-on-one fight. For Xiang Liang to be able to fight against 3 Zhou Mumu, his fighting strength had really stepped into a heaven-defying realm. However, recalling every detail of the fight just now, Wang Yuanyun really didn't think that he had exaggerated the strength of the opponent. Xinjing sect people had been planning for this fight for a long time. All the preparation work had been deduced and perfected for a long time, so when they made their move, it was as powerful as a thunderbolt. Relying on being in the same boat through thick and thin, Xinjing sect people went all out to bully Xiang Liang, who was alone and whose magical power was not smooth. In their view, the group of barbarians in Royal Soldier sect were more or less similar to the barbarians in Flaming Valley. After a roar, they bravely charged forward. And in the face of the superior firepower of Xinjing sect, this was a dead end. However, Xiang Liang did not hesitate to choose to escape. On one hand, he was excited by the arrival of Xinjing sect people, on the other hand he was unprecedentedly calm and rational. Seeing that the opposite party was coming at him aggressively, he immediately decided to avoid the sharp edge. Xiang Liang's battlefield retreat ability was extremely strong. When he took a step back, his whole person completely disappeared. Even though Xinjing sect people had already laid out an inescapable net, they were still unable to catch his trace. With this retreat of Xiang Liang, dozens of sharp spells from Xinjing sect people all fell into the air. These spells were aimed at a single person. Moreover, the magical power was condensed and did not disperse. Thus, after falling into the air, it didn't cause a landslide. However, Xinjing sect cultivators who had been lurking for a long time felt their jade mansions tightening, which was unspeakably uncomfortable. From the initial tit-for-tat to the actual attack, Xiang Liang actually avoided the sharp edge. The change was too fast, making it difficult for Xinjing sect people to adapt. At the same time, this step was also unexpected. Therefore, people turned their eyes to the Wangyue siblings, hoping that the 2 battlefield commanders could give them the next instruction. However, just as Xinjing sect people withdrew their spells and waited for instructions, Xiang Liang came again. Still in his original position, he took a step forward and revealed his figure. However, this time there was a longbow in his hand. The bow body was simple and unadorned with a pale color. Its shape was like the bones of a strange beast. The bowstring was not an entity, but was woven with highly condensed magical power. The arrow used by Xiang Liang was the strange fire poison arrow of Flaming Valley. The arrowhead was taken from the lava essence from the depths of the volcano, and the sword body was sharpened from black stone that could withstand high temperature. Xiang Liang's action was extremely fast. Xinjing sect people only saw him take a step forward, pull the bow and draw the arrow. When the flame of the arrowhead was still reflected in their field of vision, a cultivator's forehead was hit by the arrow. The speed of this arrow was so fast that no one could react. After being hit by the arrow, everyone felt a boiling fire ignited in their jade mansions, and it took them a lot of effort to suppress it. This arrow was shared by more than 10 people. If it was a single person, perhaps they wouldn't even have the time to launch the life-saving secret method prepared by their sect before they completely fell. At the same time, after shooting the arrow, Xiang Liang once again took a step back. The next moment, the place where he landed was bombarded by spells. 100 meters deep pit appeared on the ground. This was the result of Xinjing sect people restraining their spells, but there was no trace of Xiang Liang. A moment later, a muffled hum came from the woodland. A Xinjing sect cultivator lurking in the shadow of a tree was heavily cut by Xiang Liang from behind, and his head was separated from his body. Fortunately, the spell of being in the same boat through thick and thin was effective, so the serious injury was instantly healed. However, the fatal wound was scattered on more than 10 people, and everyone felt a sharp pain in the back of their neck. After being hit twice in a row, yet unable to harm the opponent, Wangyue siblings saw that the situation was not good, so they immediately changed their order. Everyone gather up. As soon as their voice fell, more than 10 Xinjing sect cultivators appeared from all over the valley and hurriedly gathered toward the position of Wangyue siblings. Their complexions were gloomy and frightening. They originally thought that this would be a battle of good timing, good geographical, and good human conditions, but unexpectedly from the beginning of the battle, everything was out of their control. The reason why they were able to perfectly ambush the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was that there was a traitor in Flaming Valley. Jianglu rebelled against Flaming Valley, and with the evidence of seriously injuring Sacred Leaf Shaman and Wood Spirit Zhan Zai, he successfully won the trust of the upper echelon of Flaming Valley and got Xiang Liang's action route. Then, it was to design an ambush and do everything possible to suppress Xiang Liang. And it just so happened that in Flaming Valley, there were quite a few barbarian leaders who were dissatisfied with Fire Spirit Xiang Liang. Thus, the two sides hit it off and joined hands. Thus, after Xiang Liang stationed himself in the valley, he unexpectedly didn't find out that someone had already been here. The timing was too hasty, and the arrangement in the valley had once again lost the geographical advantage. Behind him, there was also the betrayal from the upper echelon, so there was no need to talk about human conditions. No matter how one looked at it, Xiang Liang had fallen into a great passive position. However, Xiang Liang didn't need the right timing, good geographical, and good human conditions. Single-handedly, he could sweep away any opponent. After Xingjing sect people grouped up, the situation slightly changed so that they wouldn't be inexplicably fatally injured by Xiang Liang. However, after grouping up, their ability to act was also greatly reduced. Every move was exposed to the sun, but Xingjing sect people always felt a chill on their backs. In front of them, the valley was a very suitable place for an ambush. Previously, when they ambushed and slaughtered the Flaming Valley barbarians, they had a deep understanding of this. It was just that the situation had been reversed. Now the ambusher and the ambushed had exchanged positions. "Hold on, don't forget our mission," Wang Yuelwanyu coldly said, barely stabilizing the morale. At the same time, she didn't believe that a peak Shudan stage Xiang Liang, whose condition was far from perfect, could really knock down more than 10 of them. "Sister, this time you finally won the bet." Lying on the messy gravel ground, Wang Yuelwanyu sighed and revealed a smile. "It's true that he couldn't defeat all of us. We're all defeated now, but he doesn't have the strength to fight anymore. Alright, I know you can't hear what I'm saying, but I still want to say this. Congratulations, sister." His sister Wang Yuelwanyu fell beside him, seriously injured and unconscious, barely alive. Just now, Xiang Liang tried to destroy the Yin and Yang treasure chest with the mountain-piercing spear, and Wang Yuelwanyu risked her life to block it. The treasure chest was saved, but she was seriously injured like never before. Fortunately, the mission was finally completed. Because in their field of vision, not far from the place where more than 10 junior brothers and sisters fell, Xiang Liang's figure also appeared. There was no trace of injury on his body, and even his breathing was calm and stable. However, anyone with a bit of eyesight could see that Xiang Liang was already an arrow at the end of its flight. His strength had been exhausted. That elusive advance and retreat must have been accompanied by a great consumption of energy. At the same time, in order to break through the trials and tribulations, in less than half an hour, he had caused nearly 100 fatal injuries to everyone. This was almost equal to 100 people being killed. The strength of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was simply despairing. However, all of this had long been expected. The people of Harmony River should be here by now. As soon as his voice fell, the blood-soaked stream suddenly surged, and a blood-colored spear hidden in the blood-colored stream suddenly broke through the surface and stabbed Xiang Liang. Chapter 417. The sudden attack of the King of Harmony River caught everyone off guard. Xiang Liang was caught off guard. He barely managed to avoid being hit in his vital organs, but his shoulder was still pierced by the blood-red spear. His whole body was pushed by an irresistible force, spinning rapidly like a top. At the same time, a black blood mist gushed out from the spinning top. This was Xiang Liang trying his best to resolve the damage caused by this spear. The ability of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect to adapt to the situation was undoubtedly demonstrated at this moment. Although it happened in a hurry, he was still able to resolve more than 90% of the damage. The tragic scene of the blood mist was shocking, but in fact, this spinning top actually expelled all of the poison contained in the blood spear out of his body, and the piercing force didn't penetrate deep into his body. The killing blow of the King of Harmony River only caused Xiang Liang a minor injury, and this was because Xiang Liang's magical power had been depleted, so he didn't have time to display many of his means. He had been fighting against Xingjing sect team for a long time, and while maintaining his own unharmed condition, he had to completely cripple the elite team of Xingjing sect. For someone whose cultivation base was suppressed by violence, it was really difficult to ascend to heaven. Right now, Xiang Liang had already stood in the clouds, ready to meet a new opponent, a strong opponent that made every bone and hair in his body nervous and excited. Xiang Liang had recognized the identity of the opponent. That graceful spear strike was a combination of hardness and softness, the penetrating force was unstoppable, and the tip of the spear was actually soft water poison. Even in 9 regions, there were only a few people who could make this spear strike with the cultivation base of King Pill, and in this world it was even more unique. The king of Harmony River, a Yi. A Ye's spear strike was successful, but his complexion was gloomy and unsightly, as if the injured person was him and not Xiang Liang. For someone who always liked to fight head-on, although that spear strike just now didn't have the intention of sneak attack, it was actually a sneak attack which made him somewhat uncomfortable. What was even more difficult to accept was that this spear strike actually didn't achieve the expected result, and the opponent's strength was even higher than expected. When he learned that Flaming Valley sneak attacked Eternal Tree and his wife Shaman was seriously injured, he immediately thought of Flaming Valley who wreaked havoc in the territory of Golden City. From a rational point of view, both of them had the same goal, which was the strongest team in this world, Golden City and Xingjing Sect Team. In particular, Xingjing Sect Team and a Yi had a deep enmity, so they should unite with Flaming Valley to contend against Golden City. However, in a Ye's view, things had never been calculated like this. Although Xingjing Sect people's raid at Harmony River was somewhat despicable and shameless, after all, everyone's position was hostile, and war should allow all means. Not to mention that the dignified capital city of Harmony River couldn't even do this kind of defense work well. A Ye's own self-blame accounted for most of it. Therefore he went deep into danger alone and hunted for revenge. However, the anger in his heart gradually subsided. However, the subsequent sneak attack of Flaming Valley made his anger boil, and he could no longer contain it. Ambushing a heavily injured woman, how could they do that? Who would dare to ally with such despicable and shameless beasts? And for Flaming Valley to be so unscrupulous, wasn't it because they were the main force to contend against Golden City and their position could not be shaken? Therefore, a Yi didn't intend to swallow his anger. You sneak attacked my wife, so I will directly behead one of your generals on the front line. A tooth for a tooth will leave a deep impression on you. Any alliance was built on mutual fear and respect. If one party was unscrupulous, the alliance would only exist in name. From the moment he received the news, a Yi spent some time to locate the location, and then immediately came at full speed. And Xingjing Sect people's timing was also very good. When a Yi rushed all the way along the stream, it was just when Xiang Liang's physical strength was at the bottom. A Yi unceremoniously launched a surprise attack, intending to determine the outcome of the battle in one blow. However, Xiang Liang's responsibility was far beyond his expectation. With just a spinning top, 90% of the battle result was turned into nothingness. And a Ye's reaction was also very fast. Since his first attack was ineffective, he reached out his hand and touched his spear. The precious blood mark power was attached to it, and the divine weapon of Harmony River, which had been passed down from generation to generation, became a sharp weapon that no one in this world could withstand. Even if Xiang Liang was in perfect condition, he could not withstand the blood-marked divine spear that could break the Golden Jade army. Seeing a Yi made his move, Xiang Liang immediately escaped. Still with one step, his figure disappeared without a trace. This kind of rapid withdrawal from the battlefield made the entire Xingjing Sect team helpless. A Yi naturally didn't have any good method. Just as the spear in his hand was filled with power, the opponent had already left his locking range, so he had no way to exert his strength. However, the difference between him and Xingjing Sect team was that, even if he couldn't solve it, he could find someone who could. Mumu, where is he? I'll share my vision with you. Right now, he's retreating at full speed and has no intention to fight again. Are you sure you want to chase him? Zhou Mumu's voice was 70% tangled and 30% helpless. She was firmly opposed to a Yi making a move against the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect at this time, but a Yi had already made up his mind, so she really couldn't persuade him. Of course I want to chase him. Otherwise, why would I come here? A Yi said, and in his mind, the figure of Xiang Liang running at full speed emerged. This was the vision sharing launched by Zhou Mumu after she locked onto Xiang Liang with the secret method of Kunlun sect. Although Zhou Mumu was not good at fighting, she was very proficient in all kinds of auxiliary spells, which was the most suitable partner for a Yi who was good at frontal combat. After locking onto the opponent, a Yi waved his hand to set off the blood-soaked stream, which formed a monstrous wave. A Yi then stepped on the wave and chased after Xiang Liang at a speed faster than the wind. One side was pursuing aggressively with irresistible force, while the other side was fleeing in exhaustion. A Yi quickly caught up to the target. Then, without the slightest hesitation, He raised the blood-marked spear that he had been accumulating power for a long time and threw it with all his strength. In his field of vision, Xiang Liang's figure was torn apart. The divine weapon of Harmony River, which was infused with the power of the blood mark, was unstoppable. Even if Xiang Liang was at his peak, he might not be able to withstand it, let alone now. Being bombarded by a Ye's divine weapon with all his strength, he was already at dead end. After successfully hitting the target, a Yi dispersed the huge wave and then fell to the ground, looking slightly tired. After running for thousands of miles and using the power of the blood mark, even if he was brave and good at fighting, he still felt his feet were empty. He propped the spear on the ground, leaned on it and asked, "What's the result?" Light footsteps came from behind him. Zhou Mumu mysteriously appeared behind him. The girl was silent for a moment and then said, "We have completely lost the trace of Xiang Liang. The probability of him being knocked down is 50%. Only 50%? I don't have much contact with him, so I'm not clear about his cards. It stands to reason that if it were me, it would be 80% difficult for me to survive, but the people of Royal Soldier Sect. Forget it, let's call it a day." A Yi thought for a moment, then retracted the spear and put it on his shoulder. His cold eyes glanced behind him. This time the elite troops of Flaming Valley have been crippled. Even if the fire spirit didn't die, he would at least shed a layer of skin. And I have become a chess piece in the hands of Golden City. This can't be considered cool at all. Zhou Mumu sighed. She had long wanted to say that the sneak attack of Flaming Valley on Eternal Tree most likely had the shadow of Golden City behind it. How could he be handsome when he came here in such an aggressive manner? However, thinking that a Yi was furious because his wife was injured, Zhou Mumu couldn't say anything more. Go back. Even if you're not good at taking care of women, there's nothing you can do here in Golden City. At the same time, in the woodland of the valley, a badly mutilated barbarian warrior's corpse suddenly trembled. This barbarian warrior was killed by the magical weapon of Xingjing sect people. At this time, countless granulation began to squirm from the stump, and the granulation quickly entangled together, abruptly merging the two parts of the corpse into one. Then the barbarian warrior staggered to stand up and walked forward. His footsteps gradually became stable and soon, it was as if he was flying. And as the barbarian warrior ran, his body also rapidly changed. From 8 meters in length, he began to shrink rapidly and soon he became a middle-sized young man with short black hair, stern eyebrows, and a cross-shaped scar on his cheek, which set off his vicissitudes of life. It was Xiang Liang. Before the blood-marked divine spear reached his body, he used the secret method of Royal Soldier Sect to complete the transfer and successfully escaped. He also got rid of the lock of Zhou Mumu, the lead disciple of Kunlun sect. His many years of low profile had been exchanged for this unexpected success. Right now, no one on the battlefield paid any attention to him. In front of him was a flat plain. For him, this battle was already over. As the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, in addition to pursuing military victory, he also understood the principle of preserving his own useful body. This time, many parties joined hands and used their killing moves one after another. If he could escape from them, it would be his victory. Although the price was the complete annihilation of more than 1,000 barbarian elites, the price paid by the other party was 100 times more than him. Because of this army, Golden City was engulfed in the flames of war, which made the people's hearts uneasy. The front line was greatly restrained, and now, the main army led by the King of Raging Flame had suppressed them into a disadvantageous position. And the Xingjing sect team had also exposed their cards. After this battle, as long as he spent some time to arrange countermeasures, the next time they met, he could do better than this time. Even his biggest enemy, Qianghua, was faintly found out some details through the methods of other Xingjing sect people. So far, Xiang Liang had already made a lot of profit. As long as he could bring these results back to the headquarters, as long as you can get out of this valley, I will give my head to you. In front of him, a burly figure had been waiting for him for a long time. Jianglu, with both hands behind his back, looked calm and indifferent. In the face of an opponent whose level was completely above him, he had already grasped victory. However, Xiang Liang's complexion changed. At this time he indeed didn't have the power to fight anymore. And in the face of such a master like Jianglu, even his hope of escaping was very slim. Perhaps this day was already doomed. It was just that he really didn't think it would come so fast. Moreover, he would fall in the hands of Jianglu. His enemy was Fairy Qianghua and not these small fries. While Xiang Liang was still stunned, Jianglu had already made the first move. He launched his Power King True Body. His whole body was surrounded by golden light as he stepped forward, shaking the rocks and cracking the ground. The heavy punch was like a meteor coming at him. At the same time, Xiang Liang suddenly discovered something and was stunned for half a step back. And in front of him, a yellow sword light suddenly lit up, and a simple and unadorned heavy sword appeared out of thin air in his field of vision, which went toe-to-toe with the Power King God Fist. Then a particularly annoying voice faintly sounded. After following me for so long, I finally found you, the brother who specializes in picking handsome young men. Chapter 418. Wang Lu. When the earthy yellow sword light lit up, Jiang Lu's heart was like a stormy sea. His immortal heart that was as motionless as a mountain trembled, and his Power King true body almost collapsed on the spot. With Jiang Lu's bravery, even in the face of a Yuanying stage expert, he wouldn't be so horrified. However, Wang Lu had left him with too much psychological shadow that he could no longer control himself. Power King true body had infinite power and he could freely use it. However, in the face of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, how could Jiang Lu dare to hold back even a little bit? This Power King true body went all out, leaving no room for maneuver. Even if the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect would suffer irreparable damage, he didn't hesitate. Of course, according to the relationship between Xinjing Sect and Royal Soldier Sect, this kind of damage would only make Xinjing Sect people happy. However, in the face of Wang Lu's non-phase sword, this all-out heavy punch suddenly became a suicide shortcut. Jiang Lu didn't dare to expect that his attack could exceed the rebound limit of Wang Lu, but he was sure that once his attack was bounced back, it would absolutely exceed his bearing limit. If he continued, it would be a dead end, but he didn't have the means to interrupt it. Seeing that Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan was right in front of him, Jiang Lu decisively made a decision. He launched the last means left by his sect elders for Xinjing Sect team. When he saw that his life was in danger, he sent himself out of the immortal dreamland and escaped. The scene in front of him instantly changed. Before Jiang Lu's forward momentum stopped, he had already appeared outside the group of immortal tombs. Escaping from death should have been fortunate, but Jiang Lu found it difficult to feel even half a bit of joy. Senior Sister Qionghua's script could be called perfect. Every step was closely linked and there was room for leeway in each step. If one step failed, there was still another step. And all the way it was really smooth and he easily ushered in the fruit of victory. Unfortunately, just as he was about to reach out to pick the fruit, an accident happened. The opponent that Jiang Lu feared the most chose the most unexpected time to appear in front of him. A yellow sword light shattered his overall plan, so much so that he didn't even have time to respond. At the moment of life and death, Jiang Lu had no other choice. In addition to launching his life-saving means, he didn't even have the time to inform his senior sister Qianghua that the plan had changed. Only he himself knew that he intercepted Xiang Liang alone in the valley. When he contacted Wang Yue's siblings, he only arranged an ambush location and a battle plan for them, as well as the news that the King of Harmony River was about to take action. He didn't mention that he would be the last insurance barrier. In other people's view at this time, Jiang Lu should still be playing the role of defecting to the enemy in Flaming Valley. After Xiang Liang was defeated, he would take over his position and seize greater benefits for Xinjing Sect team. However, in fact, Jiang Lu was not that greedy. Defeating the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was easier said than done. Even if he played all the chips in his hand, it might not be enough. Why would he put the earth on the line to lay out a game of chess in advance? His cautiousness won him a good opportunity to win the battle. Sure enough, the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was formidable. Even in the face of the King of Harmony River's assassination, he could still calmly escape. However, after all, he was not omnipotent. Finally, he revealed a flaw in front of him, but why would Wang Lu appear here? This plan was so secretive that even senior sister Qianghua didn't know the overall details, so how did Wang Lu know all of this? With strong doubts, the unwillingness in Jiang Lu's heart almost overflowed. In anger, he subconsciously punched the ground. The heavy punch that could split a mountain was wrapped in ripples the moment before it touched the ground, dispelling its power. At the same time, a harsh alarm buzzed, and it was as if there were more than 10 mountains on his body. The heavy pressure forced him to kneel down. Warning: your attempt to destroy the ground has violated the relevant provisions of Chapter 5, Article 3 of the Plentiful City Public Affairs Management Measures. According to the regulations, you are now subject to the necessary constraints. Please actively cooperate with our action. During this period you have the right to remain silent, but every word you say will become This rigid, indifferent and spell-generated voice almost made Jiang Lu's immortal heart collapse. *CKU. At the same time, in the immortal dreamland, after effortlessly killing Jiang Lu, Wang Lu chuckled and put away the sword of Mount Kuan, and then looked up and down at the always low-key lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect. Xiang Liang still maintained a high degree of vigilance. His pair of sharp eyes carefully watched Wang Lu, observing his every subtle movement, and didn't relax even a bit. Before going out this time, his master seriously told him that any of the lead disciples of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League was not simple. Qianghua was the strongest, the first among her peers, but against Zhan Zai and Zhou Mumu she might not necessarily win. Wang Lu's record was the best. It was rumored that he had even beheaded the Holy One of Western Continent, but miracles could not happen every time. In the immortal dreamland, due to the restriction of conditions, the gap between the strong and the weak was reflected. Zhan Zai and Zhou Mumu were the most restricted, so they were not a concern. Qianghua had the secret method of Xingjing sect, so her advantage might be the biggest. However, the most alarming one was still Wang Lu. For this young cultivator who had risen to fame in the continent, Royal Soldier Sect had done a detailed investigation. In terms of strength, Wang Lu, who had achieved small success in non-phase method, was indeed worthy of the title of the lead disciple of the 5 uniques. However, he was not particularly outstanding. His void spirit root was really a pain in the ass. Wang Lu's real strength lay in taking advantage of the situation. His ability to take advantage of the situation was almost unparalleled in the world. If it was an idealized life and death contest in the arena, Wang Lu was likely to be at the bottom of the 5 uniques. However, his legendary record in the Western continent had been occasionally circulated in a small circle. As a Shudan, the other side could turn him into ashes in one breath. However, such a strong opponent was also beheaded by Wang Lu with the help of a demigod. And the 5 spirits' power struggle in the immortal dreamland was obviously not an idealized arena. In this environment, Wang Lu was like a fish in water. Actually, for Xiang Liang, it didn't matter what the miraculous record of Wang Lu meant. Because even though his sect had analyzed it for a long time, he still didn't understand it. For him, complicated things were not as good as simple. Therefore, he only needed to remember one thing. In the immortal dreamland, never provoke Wang Lu. Unfortunately, this time it was Wang Lu who came to his door. Xiang Liang lacked the ability to deal with complex situations. In the face of Wang Lu's uninvited visit, he could only stay motionless, waiting for the opponent's next move. Seeing the vigilant Xiang Liang, Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh and then reached out his hand to Xiang Liang. "Let's get to know each other? I'm Wang Lu." Xiang Liang responded very seriously, "I know you. You're the lead disciple of Spirit Sword Mountain, Earth Element Blood Spirit. You're here, for what?" The 4 words "for what" were said with a slight jerkiness, which showed that Xiang Liang was not used to these polite words. Most likely, it was the result of being trained by the sect elders before he went down the mountain. Wang Lu didn't care about Xiang Liang's indifference and continued to stretch out his hand in midair. "I'm here of course to form an alliance with you, to jointly resist the great demon king of Xingjing sect, Qianghua." "Ally against Xingjing sect?" Xiang Liang somewhat strangely frowned. "What? In the environment of immortal dreamland, you should be the best at taking advantage of the situation. According to your past record, you can defeat the other 4 blood spirits alone, so why do you need to ally with other people to contend against Qianghua?" Where did these superstitious stories come from? Wang Lu was simply dumbfounded. There were many rumors about him in 9 regions. However, if others believed them, then that was fine. But the person in front of him was the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect, one of the most influential figures in 9 regions. How could he also believe in these rumors? Could it be that he thought that his reputation was low-key and his fans were not enough? Superstitious stories? Hearing Wang Lu's answer, Xiang Liang could not help but frown. Indeed, from the existing theoretical and practical point of view, it's not reasonable to divide the strength and threat level of a Shudan stage cultivator to that of a deity stage cultivator. Well, it seems that there has been a major mistake in the work of the intelligence analysts. When I return to the mountain, I must report this to Master and seriously investigate it. While saying that, Xiang Liang gradually raised a smile, and his sharp eyes also showed a bit of friendliness. "In that case, I can understand the purpose of your visit." Xiang Liang held Wang Lu's hand. "Thank you for your support just now. I am willing to accept your alliance." Wang Lu smiled. Although Xiang Liang's character was indeed a bit eccentric, he had never rejected eccentric people. At the same time, Wang Lu had always liked straightforward people. The alliance ceremony between Spirit Sword and Emperor Army was quite sloppy. Wang Lu and Xiang Liang shook hands and then exchanged a smile with each other. The alliance was thus established. After the alliance was formed, Wang Lu unceremoniously seized the leadership of the alliance. Senior brother Xiang Liang, please work a bit harder. For the time being, don't rush to return to Flaming Valley. Stay with me in Golden City for a while. Xiang Liang didn't mind Wang Lu's forcefulness, he was just somewhat puzzled. This proposal is very unreasonable. At present, our army has suffered a serious loss, and our supplies have also been exhausted. Our actual combat capability has been greatly reduced. If we continue to stay in the enemy's territory, the situation will be very disadvantageous. After the decisive battle in the valley, Xiang Liang barely managed to gather more than 100 surviving remnants of Xingjing sect team, but their actual combat capability was almost zero. He himself also used up a lot of precious props in the process of killing 100 people, so he urgently needed to replenish them. But if we go back now, let alone replenishing, I'm afraid we'll be stabbed in the back. Wang Lu sneered. Senior brother, don't you want to know why you were perfectly ambushed by Xingjing sect team? A trace of amazement appeared on Xiang Liang's slightly rigid face. Indeed, my route arrangement is very secretive, and there is no oversight in the execution, but Xingjing sect team has already prepared in advance. It was obvious that their understanding of military affairs far surpassed mine. First place in the Wanxian League is indeed a well-deserved reputation. Senior brother Xiang Liang, your integrity is simply shameful. Wang Lu covered his face with his hand. Actually, there's a simpler explanation. Xiang Liang turned his head, his eyes focused and serious. You've been sold? Wang Lu coldly revealed the truth. Although your route is secretive, it's not a secret to the high-level members of Flaming Valley. At least, the king of Flaming Valley absolutely knows your overall plan. Xiang Liang nodded. This is very reasonable. He's my reasonable superior in this pass, so he has the authority to know my action plan. But the king of Flaming Valley is a person who can't control his mouth. When he's drunk, he will talk about things that he shouldn't say, and a lot of people who shouldn't hear it will hear it. Then, the spies that Xingjing sect team arranged in Flaming Valley will tell everything to the people in front of them, and then the perfect ambush against you will be logical. Xiang Liang was somewhat in disbelief. Is it that simple? Wang Lu said, it's simpler than you think. Otherwise, how do you think I could arrive in time to support you? Xingjing sect people, in any case, offered their loyalty to the high-level members of Flaming Valley. I directly bribed the high-level members of Flaming Valley with 2 bottles of wine, and then I know everything. Wang Lu paused for a moment, and then said with a smile, that's why I said Xingjing sect people are actually quite stupid. Although Xiang Liang was somewhat dull upon hearing this, he felt that he seemed to be uncomfortable. In short, returning to Flaming Valley now will not do you any good. On the contrary, if you continue to stay, we have a great opportunity to take advantage of. Chapter 419. 2 days had passed since the ambush in the valley. In the next 2 days, the soul-stirring multi-sided battle appeared to be calm. Golden City did not respond to the death of the Xingjing sect team, and Flaming Valley did not care about the death of thousands of elite soldiers in the front line. After the King of Harmony River launched a surprise attack, he retreated back to his headquarters, and the hunting operation came to an end. However, everyone knew that this silence was just brewing a bigger outbreak, and it was hard to say who would be the first to make the next outbreak. Everyone was quietly watching the change. At the same time, Wang Lu was not idle. In these 2 days he took Lan and Xiang Liang to all the cities and fortresses in Golden City, meeting many people and talking a lot. Of course, the whole process was basically done by Wang Lu. Xiang Liang and Lan were just onlookers, and then incidentally experienced the food of Golden City. In addition to eating, they had nothing more to do. Regarding this inexplicable action, both of them remained silent. Lan was accustomed to Wang Lu's unexpected behavior, while Xiang Liang was out of high professional quality. He was a qualified soldier, and the nature of a soldier was to obey. Although the position of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect should be more in the commander level, Xiang Liang was obviously more accustomed to the former. Not long after he got along with Wang Lu, he found out that Wang Lu was a natural team leader. Perhaps in tactical arrangement and execution he was stronger than Wang Lu, but in matters outside of combat Wang Lu was the expert. And professional things should obviously be left to the professionals. Of course, if Xiang Liang's choice fell into the eyes of his sect's elders, he would certainly be scolded. However, Xiang Liang's habit was really difficult to change. Fortunately, Wang Lu's inexplicable behavior did not last too long. The next night, in a food street in a bustling city of Golden City, Wang Lu, with a satisfied smile on his face, found Xiang Liang and Lan, who were experiencing folk snacks. The two of them were quite strong. When Wang Lu arrived, the table was already in a mess. In front of Lan, there were hundreds of bamboo skewers, while Xiang Liang was playing with a golden meat bun with great interest. Wang Lu smiled and asked the two, "How's the taste of the snack?" Lan embarrassedly threw away the half-eaten skewers of roasted meat in her hands, not knowing what to do. Xiang Liang nodded generously. "It's a very good supplement. It's nutritious, has a reasonable structure, and is easy to cook. If the conditions are right, we can promote it within a certain range. It should be able to effectively boost the morale of the soldiers." Wang Lu was already used to Xiang Liang's reaction. He pulled a stool beside the table and sat down. Then he grabbed a meat bun in front of Xiang Liang and ate as he spoke. "Including the ones I met today, in the past 2 days, I have already met with most of the city masters in Golden City, and the information that needs to be integrated has basically been processed. The organizational structure of Golden City was very interesting. The master of Golden City was the supreme king, and under him were dozens of subcities. Each subcity was an independent administrative unit, just like feudal vassals. However, the master of Golden City could suppress his ministers with his supreme strength and majesty. Thus, the overall political environment of Golden City was unprecedentedly stable. Therefore, the contact between Wang Lu and the subcity masters was not to instigate their rebellion. In just 2 days, no matter how professional Wang Lu was, it was impossible for him to rely on his silver tongue to collapse the organizational structure of Golden City. There was only one thing he needed to do: extract information. When it came to information, Wang Lu's complexion was somewhat strange. According to the contact with the subcity masters, the situation of Golden City is really strange. As for the other 4, no matter how bad the relationship between the Lord and the Blood Spirit is, at least we are comrades in arms who have a common goal. Only the master of Golden City has a conflict with the Shengjing sect team, which is like a father-killing enmity. Not long ago, the master of Golden City even made a 10-day appointment with Jianglu. Within 10 days he must bring your head to see him, otherwise he will seal Qianghua, the king of Gold Spirit, forever." Upon hearing this, Lan and Xiang Liang were extremely surprised. They had heard that the master-follower relationship of Golden City was not harmonious, but they didn't think that it had already reached the point of being incompatible like fire and water. Then, according to the time, today happens to be the day of the deadline. The master of Golden City is a man of his word, so I think Sister Qianghua will be kept as his mistress for the rest of her life. If Lady Boss Feng Ling, who always cooperated with Wang Lu, was here, she would certainly carry out an in-depth discussion on the specific matter of keeping a mistress. However, the 2 listeners of Wang Lu were very uncooperative. Xiang Liang was very puzzled and asked, "This is very unreasonable. Qianghua's cultivation base is number 1 in this world, and she is the most powerful weapon of Golden City. It's completely illogical for her to be abandoned." Wang Lu said, "The master of Golden City is not an incapable ruler, so there must be a reason for this. Unfortunately, there are too few clues, so I can't guess what the significance of this move is. However, at least I can put forward a guess. Senior brother Xiang Liang, if we assume that senior sister Qianghua is forever trapped in Golden City, then what do you think the situation of the 5 spirits' power struggle will be like?" Xiang Liang frowned. "If senior sister Qianghua is excluded, then," Wang Lu said, "then there's no need for the remaining 4 to form an alliance. Senior brother Xiang Liang, why don't we go and destroy senior sister Zhou and senior brother Zhan first?" What? Even with Xiang Liang's good psychological quality, after listening to Wang Lu's suggestion, he felt that he somewhat could not keep up with his thinking. A few days ago Wang Lu was still as close as a family with those 2, but now he really turned hostile faster than flipping a book. Wang Lu explained, "You see, because of their respective rulers, the alliance between senior sister Zhou and senior brother Zhan will certainly last until the last moment. And if the 2 of them join forces in this world except for senior sister Qianghua, no one can match them. Therefore, how about we defeat them first and then we decide the winner and loser?" Xiang Liang thought for a moment, and then suddenly solemnly stood up. "If this is your idea, then forgive me for withdrawing from the alliance." Wang Lu asked, "Why?" Xiang Liang said, "First, I don't have the confidence to defeat you one-on-one in your arrangement. If there are only you and me left among the 5 spirits, for me, I will certainly lose. Second, I will not trust an ally who easily betrays the alliance. If you can betray them, naturally you can also betray me. Third, I don't like it. Upon hearing Xiang Liang's third reason, Wang Lu smiled with great satisfaction. Senior brother Xiang Liang is indeed worthy to be the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect. Your righteousness is admirable. In that case we can now move on to the next round. With that, Wang Lu's look turned serious. I think so far all of this is *King trap laid out by Qianghua. For Xingjing Sect team, the biggest problem in this round is that their starting advantage is too big, which naturally attracts hatred. Being targeted by the 4 forces is their fate. And no matter how strong Xingjing Sect team is, they can't twist the alliance of the 4 forces. If I were Qianghua, I would rather cut off one of my arms to disintegrate our 4 forces alliance first. Judging from the current situation, it was developing along this trajectory. I don't believe that with Qianghua's ability, she would be suppressed by a mere immortal dream puppet in this world. She definitely did it on purpose, putting on the appearance of a tied-up bird ready to be plucked. Whoever believes it is real is a fool. As for what the Master of Golden City is thinking, none of us know. Since he can use the blood mark to suppress Qianghua, naturally he can also release her. After listening to this, Xiang Liang fell into contemplation and then said, "It's all intentional? Including the defeat in the valley ambush?" Of course it includes it. Or to be precise, regardless of the outcome of that battle, it's all in the plan of Xingjing Sect team. For Xingjing Sect team, it's best to solve the great threat of the lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect. If the battle goes well, even a Yi who is used as a chess piece can be cleaned up, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. However, even if the battle fails, it doesn't matter. The sacrifice is nothing more than the small fries on the periphery. The real core character of Xingjing Sect team is only Qianghua, so it doesn't matter if the others die. On the contrary, this heavy loss can make others relax their vigilance. And what we have to do now is to stick together. No matter how the outside situation changes, we must firmly lock onto one goal and never waver. Before we completely defeat Xingjing Sect and Golden City, nothing else is important. Listening to Wang Lu's words, Xiang Liang gradually revealed a smile. This conclusion was exactly what he wanted. As a soldier, the most taboo was to have vague goals, disunity of thought, and overcautious in everything. And Wang Lu's words were too much to his liking. Very good. Wang Lu also smiled. It was finally done. In these 2 days, in addition to collecting intelligence and locking on to Qianghua, the most important task for Wang Lu was to stabilize Xiang Liang. This inflexible lead disciple of Royal Soldier Sect was the ally that he needed to win over the most. In the future decisive battle with Qianghua, Xiang Liang's strength was indispensable. At the same time in these 2 days, how could Xiang Liang not be observing Wang Lu? This young and already famous disciple of the same generation had long aroused his curiosity. In this test, how to deal with the relationship with Wang Lu was a big test for Xiang Liang. He didn't know how to think too complicated, but at least in these 2 days of getting along, based on his intuition, he was willing to make friends with Wang Lu. Thus, the result of these 2 days of getting along was the establishment of a real alliance. Wang Lu and Xiang Liang tacitly held hands. They were ready to welcome the storm together. However, when the 2 palms touched, Wang Lu's palm suddenly bloomed with a faint blue light, and a horizontal water curtain rippled in his palm. It was a beautiful scene, but when Wang Lu saw the water curtain, his face suddenly turned livid. A moment later he angrily crushed it, splashing water everywhere. Damn it, are those 2 idiots shooting a romance film? Xiang Liang's eyes were keen. Before Wang Lu crushed it, he saw the words on the water curtain. Although he was somewhat confused, the aggressive momentum of the person who wrote it had already hit him in the face. I can't coexist with that bastard Zhan Zai anymore. Junior brother Wang, if you're loyal, come back and help me destroy that inhuman thing. As long as you help me, I will give you the 5 blood spirit crown. Chapter 420. Senior Sister Zhou, in the face of the overall situation, don't be unreasonable, okay? Inside the eternal tree in a quiet tree hole, Zhan Zai, with a tired and irritated look, shook his head. In front of him, Zhou Mumu sneered, and her eyes were overflowing with contempt. Making trouble out of nothing? You have the face to say that, Zhan Zai. In any case, 10,000 Art Sect is a famous upright sect, but their lead disciple is actually a prostitute. Do you want me to turn a blind eye to it? I'll say it for the last time, there is no love affair between me and Shaman. Not now, but if left unchecked, who knows when there will be. Zhou pointed at Zhang Zai's nose. Do you think I'm blind? The two of you are exchanging flirtatious glances with each other. Let me tell you, if you immediately break off with Shaman, I will still recognize you as my junior brother. Otherwise, what are you going to do? Zhang Zai's ice-cold voice suddenly dropped the temperature in the tree hole. When all is said and done, when did the relationship between you and me become so harmonious? We are competitors. If you insist on provoking me and refuse to give up, then we might as well decide the winner and loser here. I don't have the patience to send an unruly person like you. I'm unruly? Zhou almost turned hostile on the spot, but she suppressed her anger and made the final confirmation. Very well, since you insist on doing things your own way, then I have nothing to say. Let's prepare to meet on the battlefield. Zhang Zai sneered. Meet on the battlefield? Do you think you can make the decision? Eternal Tree and Harmony River have been connected by marriage for generations. Do you think you can sow discord between the two with just a few words? Looking at Zhang Zai's shameless face, Zhou only felt unprecedentedly annoyed. However, she had to admit that as long as the relationship between a Yi and Shaman was still there, it would be very difficult for her to really confront Zhang Zai on the battlefield. A Yi, that idiot, was already hopeless. Half a day ago, after withdrawing from the ambush in the Valley of Golden City, a Yi directly returned to Eternal Tree with Zhou, and the return gift was his fruitful hunting results. However, after returning to the Eternal Tree, Shaman's reaction was far colder than expected, and the ambiguous relationship between her and Zhang Zai could be seen by people with eyes. Zhou turned pale with fright because she had always thought that Zhang Zai was at least from an upright sect and should have a bottom line when doing things. As a result, unexpectedly, the long-cherished wish of that mentally ill person, a Yi, was fulfilled. Zhou immediately became furious. She unceremoniously reprimanded Zhang Zai for being a despicable person. Zhang Zai, on the other hand, was baffled. During the period when he and Shaman were in seclusion, it was true that they had a tacit understanding and their relationship had heated up. However, to say that there was any unbearable behavior, that was simply nonsense. Zhang Zai asked himself, as the lead disciple of 10,000 Arts sect, since childhood, he had wholeheartedly devoted himself to learning, so how could he have any love affair? No matter how much Shaman surprised him, she was nothing more than a pink skeleton. The closest contact between the two was when he helped Shaman to change her meridians and wash her marrow, which required them to be completely honest with each other. However, throughout the whole process, Zhang Zai only held Shaman's hand and didn't do anything else. Moreover, at that time Wang Lu bumped into him halfway through the process of changing his meridians and washing his marrow, which was an extremely embarrassing situation. However, even a despicable person like Wang Lu didn't misunderstand him and just wanted to stop joking around. How could Zhou, on the other hand, never stop? Thus, Zhang Zai's counterattack was a matter of course. Originally, he and Zhou had a common friendship, so at this time, under his anger, he didn't yield even an inch. Naturally, Zhou was angered to the point that her immortal heart swayed, thinking, no wonder some people said that the group of otakus in 10,000 Arts sect are shameless perverts. They have been lacking friends of the opposite sex for a long time, so in order to enjoy the pleasures of intimacy, they would do anything. Originally, Zhou thought that it was a malicious rumor, but now it seemed like it was not groundless. If she let go of this shameless slut Zhang Zai, Zhou wouldn't be able to die in peace. Therefore, she directly sent a message to Wang Lu, asking for help. There were some things that, although Zhou was helpless, she believed that Wang Lu would certainly have a way. Not to mention that Zhang Zai already had a criminal record. He once tried to pursue Wang Lu's forbidden woman, Lu Li. And in Zhou view, people like Wang Lu, who were used to being strong, often had a special obsession with cleanliness. It didn't matter if you offended him, but if you dared to touch his woman, he would definitely destroy your whole family. Thereupon the message was sent out. Zhou sneered and waited for Wang Lu to come and join her side by side to cut down the evil. However, not long after the message was sent through the water curtain, she heard Wang Lu's roar in her ear. Surnamed Zhou, do you have nothing better to do? Now is the important time to establish a united front against Zhang Zai, yet you tell me that you and Zhang Zai are absolutely irreconcilable? Zhou beautiful face turned pale. After gawking for a long time, she inexplicably roared back, You actually yelled at me? Do you know what's going on here? Wang Lu snappily said, What else could happen? Why would an outsider like you care about other people's marital relationship? You. Zhou choked several times and couldn't speak. You already knew? And then you turned a blind eye to it? I'm not as sick as you. Senior Sister Zhou, think about it carefully. This is the story setting of an immortal dream land. We are not here to protect other people's happiness in marriage. Our goal is, Zhou Mumu angrily interrupted, enough. You're all the same. Just because this is not the real world, you can do whatever you want? You can even throw away any bottom line? Didn't the elders of your Lingjian school teach you that no matter where you are, you must maintain a pure heart? Wang Lu, I thought you were a good person, but now it seems that I was wrong. If you want to collude with Zhan Zai, that's up to you. Let me tell you, I can't tolerate this kind of thing. Wang Lu took a deep breath. Well, Senior Sister Zhou, calm down, I'll explain it to you in detail. Hello. Damn, you dare to hang up on me? After cutting off the call with Wang Lu, Zhou Mumu took a deep breath and temporarily suppressed her anger. She couldn't tell why she suddenly couldn't control her emotions. In fact, what Wang Lu said was right. This was the scene of an immortal dream land. No matter what was done to the people in the scene once they passed the trial, it would turn into a dream bubble. What's more, this was other people's business. Even a Yi himself didn't say anything, so what qualifications did she, an outsider, have to care so much? It was just that when she and a Yi went hunting together, every time they succeeded, a Ye's childlike innocent smile, as well as his unreserved love for his wife. Zhou Mumu felt that such feelings should not be tarnished. In fact, she didn't care much about the 5 blood spirits crown. In this trial, all the lead disciples of the 5 uniques were gathered, but there was only one final winner. In the face of powerful enemies like Wang Lu and Xiong, Zhou Mumu from the beginning didn't feel that she had much hope to persist until the end. Therefore, compared to the result, she paid more attention to the process. Although her relationship with a Yi had always been bumpy, and his maverick behavior repeatedly made her angry, she was gradually attracted to him. A Yi was sentimental. Such a person could be knocked down on the battlefield, but he should not be betrayed emotionally. Knowing that all of this was just an illusion, Zhou Mumu still couldn't help it. Perhaps many people would laugh at her for being too deep in the play and stupid. However, she set foot on the immortal path so that she could have the qualifications to be willful and stupid in her long life. If she had to be cautious in her immortal cultivation, step by step without any joy, then she would rather not cultivate this immortal path. Thinking of this, Zhou Mumu suddenly felt that the Grey King pill in her jade mansion gradually bloomed. The king pill that was forced into a deep sleep by the secret method of Kunlun seemed to be awakening. After perceiving this, Zhou Mumu's heart was suddenly moved. Then, she closed her eyes and forcefully suppressed her restless immortal heart with the Kunlun immortal technique. She took a few deep breaths, and the mana in her body was evenly distributed and permeated. Then she opened her eyes again and there was a smile on her face. Not far from her, Zhan Zai saw that Zhou Mumu had calmed down and coldly snorted. Have you made enough trouble? For the sake of the alliance between the 2 sects, I'll pretend that today's matter didn't happen. I'll go first, you can stay and play by yourself. With that, Zhan Zai was about to leave this secret tree hole. However, just as he turned around, an alarm sounded behind him. He immediately launched his thunder body and his body turned into a lightning bolt. Thunder was invisible and formless, extremely hard and strong. Once his thunder body was launched, Zhan Zai would have an unrestrained explosive power. However, this time he felt as if he was trapped in a cage. His whole body was under an irresistible pressure, and his body felt like it was about to collapse. Above his head, a Vajra ring buzzed and vibrated, slowly rotating, and an endless suppressive force spread out from it. Zhou Mumu coldly said, Junior brother Zai, when this matter is over, I will go to 10,000 Arts sect to apologize. However, please leave this place first. You dare to sneak attack me? No need to struggle. Although I'm not good at fighting, it's not that easy to break free from my Vajra ring. Senior brother, if you don't want your jade mansion to be damaged, then activate the mechanism to leave this place. Although I despise your behavior, I don't want to hurt you. In your dreams? Very well, then I'll wait for your body to collapse, and the mechanism will automatically activate. Zhou Mumu said and increased the magical power output of the Vajra ring. Zhan Zai roared and lightning bolts flickered. Junior brother, next time remember, be a man and act with integrity. Sneak attack, yet you still have the face to talk about acting with integrity? Zhou Mumu kept her mouth shut. Her right hand shook, and the Vajra ring began to violently vibrate, dropping a primal chaos halo that bound Zhan Zai layer by layer, gradually tightening and strangling him. Zhan Zai tried his best, but he still couldn't break free. Although he had mastered 10,000 methods, when he was sneak attacked by the Vajra ring, he didn't have the ability to fight back. However, just as he was about to be strangled, the tree hole suddenly opened, and a tall figure appeared at the entrance. Yi carried the spear on his shoulder and curiously asked, "What are you guys doing?" "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."